All right, so I'll do a quick live summarizing what I just touched on the last live. I found a very interesting quote as I wanted to talk about that the 10 tribes are actually in Africa. And I was looking at this quote from Flavius Josephus, and I think it's important to break this down because I thought this was interesting. There's a saying by Flavius Josephus that goes, let me go to it real fast. And basically, this is the main thing that many people quote: the 10 tribes are beyond the river Euphrates until now. So, usually, when we think of the river Euphrates, we're going to think of up here. So, are they going to be north of the Euphrates or south? Now, we have to look at the context. Let's look at what the context here, and we're going to see which direction is actually going here. Let's look at this. So this is a letter. First, it's going to talk about the letter from Artaxerxes that's going to be pretty much given to Ezra. We also Shalom, shalom, brother. Shalom, shalom. Let's have a holy conversation on some deep historic and genetic information. Let me just hit some things here. All right. Hold on. Yeah. All right. All right. Let's talk about some things real fast. So we had an interesting conversation, with this video. Now, let's examine something to get a little understanding on this information on this note. All right. So this page, obviously, we know this is about the time of Ezra, right? During the time of Artaxerxes, when he basically made the decree for them to go and everything. But let's look at this. Let's look at this part. Let's go over a little bit. Let's take a look. Let's read it word for word and let's understand what it's saying, right? Unbiasedly, no bias. It says, and came to Babylon, because what is it talking about? Let's go back a little bit because we gotta start a little bit over here. Just to get a simple understanding where the sentence start. All right. Because I want to be fair, let's look at this. Show it. Yep, that's right. Watch what it says here. When Ezra's had received this epistle, right? He was very joyful and began to worship God and confess that he had been the cause of the king's great favor to him, right? And that obviously all the things that I talked about before and what we see, but let's keep reading. And that for the same reason he gave all the thanks to God. So he read the epistle at Babylon. Okay, so he's at Babylon. We got to open a note. We got to have the time. We got to have a map. We need a map of the time of Media and Persia. We need a good map of the time of Media and Persia so we get a good understanding of it. I've seen some okay ones. I'm just taking a look here to see if there's any more detailed or more realistic looking ones. This one's fine though. We can work with this. We can work with this, right? We'll work with this. Let's just work with this because this is the Babylonian area. This is Media, and this is going to be where the area was reigned, where you have Persia, right? It's very important to know what's going on here, these maps. All right, you approve these maps. Let's work with these maps. Let's look here. Now, we gotta make sure we set the setting. All right. So Ezra is where? So he read the epistle at Babylon to those Jews that were there. So where are the Jews? In Babylon. All right. So let's go to Babylon. So where's Babylon? Right here. Very important to understand. And we got to see what side of the Babylon, because this is Babylon too. So what side of Babylon are they on? Are they on this side of Euphrates or this side of Euphrates? Let's see what side of Euphrates they're on. Watch what it says here. Right? Let's go to the next one. So he read it to the Jews, but he kept the epistle for himself. Let's go over. Okay, it says, and sent a copy to all those of his own nation that were in Media. Okay, so where's Media? Up here. Okay, we have Media up here. So where is Ezra? Over here. Ezra's over here, and Media is over here. He has some other people over here. Okay, we're going to keep that noted. that we have a group here and we have a group here. Now let's see what happens here. It says, and when these Jews, these are all Jews, right? And when these Jews had understood what piety the king had towards God and what kindness he had towards Ezra, they were all greatly pleased, right? Nay, many of them took their effects with them. Okay, let's see. They're ready to go somewhere. Let's see where they're going, right? Remember, where are they at? They're in these two locations. These two locations they're in, right? Let's remember that. These are two locations. And what's up here? This is Asia. Over here, all this is Asia. This is actually called Asia. You can look it up yourself. The time of Asia. You can look up Asia in the book of Acts, right? Put the book of Acts. Let's put a map. It's also important to know where's Asia, right? Here's Asia. You can see what's going on there. Some few people know that. When they think about Asia, they don't think that Asia is all of this. They don't think this is all Asia. Up here is Europe. Up there is Europe. Here is Asia. All the way, all of this is Asia. Everything up here is Asia. Everything, right? We're gonna look at that. The reason why I mentioned that, we're gonna look at that, right? So everyone in media and in Babylon, remember, everyone in media in Babylon got the note. Everyone got the note, right? So they're all ready, right? They took their effects with them. They're ready. They're going somewhere. Let's see where they're going. It says, and came to Babylon. Now, who came to Babylon? Right? Who came to Babylon? Right? Let's see what's going on here. Media, everyone over here came to Babylon, right? Because these ones are already in Babylon. If these was already in Babylon, why did it say they came to Babylon? Because this group here came to Babylon. So now they're all together, right? You see what's going on there? They're all gathered together in Babylon. Can we all agree that everyone who received that letter, even the ones that were in media, came to Babylon? Okay, they're all in Babylon, right? It says right there, right? And came to Babylon, right? Very desirous. What did they want to go? Which way did they want to go from Babylon? Where did they want to go? Let me make sure I open up a map here so we can see which way is north and south, so we don't get nobody trying to say east and west or nothing like that. Let's actually see what this actually is. Let's just plug this in. Sometimes I gotta stay on this thing while it loads, but we'll see if it'll go. If not, I'll just, there we go. All right, let's go. I'm gonna make it north and south so we can see which way is north and which way is south, right? Let's zoom in. Let's zoom in so we can get north and south. Here's a north and south pole. All right, we're perfectly north and south. We're perfectly north and south. Let's go over here and let's make sure we go about this very thoroughly. All right, they came to Babylon, so everyone's in Babylon, right? Everyone's going to be in Babylon, right, in this area. But which way? Are they on this side of Euphrates or this side of Euphrates? Let's see. Watch what they say. They are desirous to go to Jerusalem. Which way is Jerusalem from Babylon? South. Okay, they want to go down to Jerusalem because it says right there, they're desirous to go down to Jerusalem, down into Jerusalem. Okay, the Jews want to go down to Jerusalem, but watch what it says here. But then the entire body of the people of Israel remain in that country, wherefore there are but two tribes. You hear what I just said there? They remain in this country. How many people are in that country? Wherefore there are but two tribes in Asia, in Europe. So there's only two tribes in Asia, in Europe. Up here is Europe. This is Asia. All this is Asia. For the sake of understanding, all this is Asia. So where there are two tribes, and we can know that by watch what it says here. Subject to the Romans, it says, while the 10 tribes are beyond the Euphrates to now. Now, where's beyond the Euphrates? If they're at the right, if they're at the Euphrates River, where's beyond the Euphrates? Downwards. How do we know that Euphrates go? How do we know that they're talking about going downwards? Because we can just keep on reading the context. Let's keep reading the context. So it says they're in innumerable number, right? And immersive, right? Immense number, right? It's so many of them, right? It cannot be estimated. It cannot be counted by number, right? You can't count them. It's too many of them. Let's go over here. It says, now there came a great number of priests and Levites. This is how we know that it's actually going southward. Watch what it says here. I'm going to show you that they're going to go beyond the Euphrates, and let's see which way is beyond the Euphrates. It says, now there came a great number of priests and Levites, potters, sacred singers, and obviously right here, you can see all these things, Ezra, all these whatnot. Just good right here. Let's see. It says, so gathered those that were in captivity, right? So he gathered those that were in captivity together beyond the Euphrates. So what just happened there? What just happened there? So he just gathered those together, and where did he take them? Beyond the Euphrates, and stand there and stayed there. That's actually what stayed there. For sake of understanding, stayed there 3 days. So what just happened there? Let's make sure we understand this so that we don't get no one thinking that this is actually being illy used. Let's understand this. Let's just go up to here. Watch what it says here. Let's understand this in grammar form, right? So he, being Ezra, gathered those, being the people in the captivity, right, who were in captivity, right, that were in captivity. These are those that were in captivity, together beyond the Euphrates. So he's gathering, Ezra's gathering the captivity beyond the Euphrates. How do we know that that's what's happening here? Because it says they stayed there. If we try to say that they're gathering a group, now let's try to use this in nonsensical form. Let's just say, let's say like this. Ezra gathered a captivity that was beyond the Euphrates. This captivity is beyond the Euphrates. See, you hear that? He's gathering a captivity that's beyond the Euphrates. Okay, if he's gathering a captivity beyond Euphrates, where did they stay? And stayed there 3 days. So he gathered a captivity beyond the Euphrates and stayed there 3 days. Understand, when we look at the next part, it clearly tells you what happens right after that moment of time, after they finished their prayers and everything, after they stayed there. It says they removed from Euphrates. Now, what does that mean, from? If they removed from the Euphrates, if I'm saying I'm going from somewhere, that means it's behind me. That means I'm going from there. I'm not going over there. I'm not crossing over. I'm going from there. That's important to understand. So therefore, let's read it in context and understanding of truth, right? Read it in the right context and you'll understand what's being said here. So he gathered those, he, being Ezra, gathered those, being those in the captivity. Where did he gather them? Together beyond the Euphrates. Beyond the Euphrates is southwards. As it said, they desire to go downwards, right? Let's go back, right? Let's take a look right here, right? And came to Babylon, very desirous, going down to Jerusalem. Down to Jerusalem. You hear what he just said there? Down to Jerusalem. Obviously, when we look at the scripture, it says, obviously when I say scripture, I'm used to just reading scripture, but right here, this is a historical quote by Flavius Josephus, right? Wherefore there are but two tribes in Asia and Europe subject to the Romans. So there's no other tribes in Asia than Europe. Otherwise, guess what you'll have? Guess what you think Israel will stay right here? What was over here? Do you know what was over here? This was not a place Israel when if Israel was over here, you know what the desire would be to get out of there, at least to be in some area with the Romans, maybe to at least settle with the Romans. Not one of the 10 tribes is with the Romans. Not one of the 10 tribes are over here. Not one of them. None of them. None of them are in Asia and Europe. None of them. They can't just all. They're not going to all be in this area. Why would they be in the area where the Persians were? Why would they be in an area where they was basically fighting all the time? Why would they be in an area where there was constant war? When Edom was ruling. In fact, who was ruling up here? Do you know who was ruling up there? Let's take a look. Let's take a look at some history. Let's look at. Let's see. Uh, right here. You see this person right here? What line do you think this person come from that's ruling Armenia during this time frame when the Romans were ruling, about the time before Messiah, or even this is actually the time where Messiah was there. This is actually the time where Messiah was there. Um, what do you think he's ruling? Armenia. This is a, this is a, this is a, this is what you're seeing here. This Armenia. Let's look at it in an ancient map during that time. And who was under subjection to the Romans? Armenia. Armenia was under subjection to the Romans. How do we know they was under subjection to the Romans? Because Edom was under his subjection. Herod was under his subjection. These are the Edomites that were reigning in Armenia. Think the Jews will be in the Edomites' land? Let's go to One. Let's go to one. Matter of fact, let's go to a Roman one. We'll just find it with the Romans. Go to. Sometimes you got to go to a certain year. Let's just try something. Let's just see if we get close to some type of year. I want to get in between a certain time frame. I want to show you the Armenian kingdom. See, this is why it's important to know a little bit more than just the common quote, because when you get the common quote, you're not going to really get these deeper things. It's very important to see these things, right? Because this was all controlled by Romans. This whole area. What happened in those time? What happened in those areas, right? You got all the kingdoms came: Babylon, right? Persia, Media, Greece, right? And then the Romans, right? I want to see if I can find I'm thinking of a year. What's a year that we have a Roman map? Uh, let's see. Let's see. I need a certain year. I know I can find one. 17. Yeah, that's. I'm gonna find one early, early, but not too early. Let's see if I can find one. I can find one during the time of Christ. Let's see. Uh, I mean, this is basically it. But this, birth of Christ and everything, Roman Empire. This is what they had control of, because you got a lot of people, when you think of Rome, you think there's no confederations. You think nobody's in agreement with the people. You think they're just going to be have a bunch of people all around them and have no agreement. They was constantly trying to get, who Rome wanted. They wanted to attack the Parthians. That's what they were fighting with. And there was a middle ground between them. And they had an alliance. These groups right here kept on switching in alliances. They were throughout all of history, they kept on switching in alliances. That's what they kept doing to survive. They kept switching in alliances. And it was alliance with Rome. It's important to understand these areas that they controlled, these are all one. What do you think Edom was over here controlling Jerusalem for no reason? How do you think that happened? How do you think Edom ended up reigning over Jerusalem? Look at the lineages. Look at these lineages. How do we reign in Armenia? Edom was under Romans control. This is Herod's lineage from Judah. Look at how many times they reign in Judah. Judah. You think they're gonna reign in Armenia and reign in Judah and there's no control over them? You got to understand, this is without a doubt, for a fact. You got to take in notes of the facts of the line of Edom and where he reigned, right? Why in the world would Israel be in the land of Edom? That's important to understand. That's not what you're seeing there. That's you're not seeing. You got to understand what is an alliance. What is an alliance, right? He's not going to have. He's not going. Rome is not going to. Who Rome? Remember, Rome owns Jerusalem. They're not going to have Edom reigning over Jerusalem and not have a agreement with them. There's an agreement that's made with them. It's important to understand that they have an agreement. And you can go through levels of history, and you can see that agreement. You can see how they're all agreed. That's important, right? So what do we have to also know besides this? Where's east? Which way? Right? They're going down to Jerusalem, right? They're going down to Jerusalem. If they're going down to Jerusalem, then they're going downwards, southwards, and they're in numeral numbers on the other side of Euphrates. If they're in numeral numbers over here, do you know what that means? Then Josephus lied, because there actually would be in Asia and Europe, because they say in innumerable numbers. In this, you can't even count it. They can't even be put as numbers. So where were they? Where were they in history? Which one? In Iran, when we can actually follow their history throughout all time? Armenia, who we can follow all their history in all time? If they're not in Europe and Asia, they're not in Europe and Asia, but they're in innumerable numbers. What did it just say there? Right? It's letting us know how many of them, right? Massive. On the other side of Euphrates. Where are they not at? Europe and Asia. So if they're in this much numbers, that's not a small number. That's not a small number. You see what it's saying there? That's important to understand. That's not a small number. Therefore, they're not, but take in note, family, brother. Take a note. It doesn't matter if they were subject to the Romans or not. It doesn't matter because it says they are not in Asia and Europe. It doesn't matter if they were subject to the Romans or not. It says the two tribes that are in Asia and Europe are only Judah. You see what it's saying? That's a fact. You have to take in that fact. Where would they be here? They cannot be right here. You know why they cannot be right here? Because it tells you itself. It tells you that they're on the other side of Euphrates, right? And we see that even Judah, that was over here, went on the other side of Euphrates, downward, southward. It's a fact. Now speaking of, let's talk some real fast. Let's talk genetics. Now, brother, Bug Out, can you tell me what is the genetic line of Israel? Can you tell me which haplogroup group letter is the line of Israel? Can you tell me? Can you tell me which haplogroup group letter, which Y chromosome is the line of Israel? That's important to know because if you don't know that, then you're going to be taken for granted. You understand? You have to know the line of Israel before you even attempt to try to understand it, right? You have to have an idea, a guess, right? Do you think haplogroup J? If you think haplogroup J, we can talk about that, right? If you don't know the haplogroup, you should. But let me show you something. I'm gonna show you something so you know about this. Let me show you something. I made a video today. I think you should see. I think you should see it. It's about the J and the E, right? It's on a playlist right here. You can see it, Synthetic Sunday.
Time I go over this,
I'm gonna pause this. I'm gonna go down real fast. If you go to the last video right here, just see this, right? Are the Arabs haplogroup J or E? And you will see a geneticist himself tell you multiple times that haplogroup J is going to be a Turkish lineage. Haplogroup J is a Turkish lineage. It's important to understand that. And once you understand that, you'll understand that the haplogroup E is the lineage. It's important to understand that. And he relates it. You can see him in a moment when you see him relating it when the Turks come in, which is haplogroup J. And then how haplogroup E is still there. Now, let me show you something. I want to show you, does haplogroup E have any evidence of being in the Levant? Does it have any evidence of actually being in the land of Israel? Let me just show you something for the sake of understanding. I want to show you because if you think about haplogroup E, who do you think has haplogroup E? Let me just show you so you see E1, B1A. Because usually when you see their face, you're like, no, that's not Israel. That can't be Israel. Let's just put people, right? It's an idea of what they look like. Haplogroup E, right? Obviously, male right there, right? We can see who has haplogroup E, right? E1, B1A. Let me show you something. Let me show you something. Let me just show you when we look at E1, B1A, right? It's important to know a little bit something of genetics, right? Exactly. Yes, so were the Philistines, but we know where the Philistines were because we have a graveyard of the Philistines. We have a graveyard of the Philistines, so we know the difference between the Philistines, which have the R haplogroup, which has R M290, right? 69 for the sake of understanding. That's very important to understand. That's a different line, right? The R1B lineage is a different lineage, and that's clear. But as you can see here, here's E1B1. The E lineages are in the areas where Abraham was. Even the ancient lineage of CT that splits into E. So it's very important to understand this E lineage and the Natufian, they're all up here. All the ancient there you can't find any ancient branch of the E lineage outside of this. You can't. It's a fact. You can't find any ancient E lineage that's going to be in Africa. That's deep in Africa. You just can't. It's not something you find. Yeah. No, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. This first of all, let's understand something. For you to even come to that conclusion, the problem is you're not even matching history up together. Who are the Canaanites? Who are the Phoenicians? Who are the Phoenicians? The Phoenicians were the ones that moved into the area where you see Carthage, right? You got to follow history. You got to be honest with history. That's a false lie. Canaan is one line of Ham. That's ridiculous. And we can follow their history throughout all of history. That's ridiculous. So this is not Canaan. That's you know what they would say if this was Canaan? They would say this was Canaan. Canaan was not up here. That's a false lie. Canaan was not in the area where Abraham was. In fact, let's look what the scriptures say. This is how you know that you're guessing. Because if you're trying to say that, you're not understanding what the scripture's saying. See what it says right here? Let me show you something. See these routes? Let's look at these routes right here. You see these routes? See this area, Haran? Who was over here? What did Abraham say when he said to go up there? Watch what he says. And Abraham took Sarah, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all his substance, right? And he went, he left, right? All the souls he had got in Haran, right? And he went down to the land of Canaan. Okay? Let's go down to see something. Let's take a look. Watch what happens here. Watch what Abraham says about Isaac. He says, "And I will make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you shall," watch what it says here, "that you shall not take a wife of my son of the daughters of Canaan, right? Among I dwell." So where do they dwell? In Israel. Because what you're not realizing is that the Natufian DNA reaches all the way up to Hebron. Understand that the Canaanite DNA does not. And in fact, we can follow the Canaanite DNA. That's a false lie. The Canaanite DNA is not that lineage. It's important to understand. You want to see? Before we do that. Matter of fact, let me type this down. Let's do something. Let me show you. Okay. Okay. Here's a Canaanite haplogroup. Who are the Canaanites? Do you know who the Canaanites are? Lebanese. The Lebanese are genetically Canaanites. It's not even a secret. How are you connecting the E lineage to a lineage that we actually have the actual genetics of the people? We have the actual genetics of the people. You can look it up. It's not that hard of a search. It's everywhere. It's without a doubt. It's J2. The J lineage is what they find the Canaanites in the area. Now, obviously, for the sake of understanding, you got to understand what's going on there because we can actually keep going. We can keep digging in these things for the sake of understanding. But let me show you something. Let's go down and take a look at something. I want to show you something right here. Watch what it says here about Isaac. "Now, therefore, my son, right, obey my voice, right? Arise, flee you to Laban, to my brother Haran," right? You can see what's going on there. That's what it's saying to Jacob. But I want to show you what it said to Isaac. Let me go up here and show you what it said to Isaac. This is what I want to show you. What it said to Isaac. Watch what it says here. It says, "But you," right? It says to swear on them, don't take no one from Canaan, right? Well, don't take no one from that land. It says, "But you shall go to my country and to my kindred." To my country and to my kindred. Where's his country and where's his kindred? Where did he tell him to go? To where you see Mesopotamia. Where do we find these lineages? Let's see the route where they all went. They all went this way. Now, pay attention to what you're seeing here. Here's the Euphrates. Here's Hebron. Where do we find the Natufian DNA? Where is the Natufian DNA? Right? Let's take a look at where's the Natufian DNA. Let's go down right here. That's where we find it at. That's where we find it in the Tufian DNA. You see what you're seeing there? So you're ignorant to try to say that a Canaanite was living in the area of Abraham. That's ridiculous. So obviously, you see that the people were up here. It's a fact, genetic fact. So that's obviously out of the water. But now let's understand this. Let's understand this on a deeper level for the sake of understanding. I myself don't believe that the Canaanites are J2. I don't. Let's actually dig a little deeper. I believe the Canaanites are going to be B lineages. I think the Canaanites are going to be more of a B lineage because that sounds pretty interesting, but it sounds odd. I did see the idea that the Lebanese are the Canaanites. I seen that idea. I heard that idea, right? I seen where they say the Lebanese are the Canaanites. I seen that, but I don't agree. I think that there was a mingled group that came down there and settled in the area of the Canaanites, that J2, right? That's what I believe. I believe that that J2 is most likely from a evasion that came down and settled in that area, and I think that that information is a little off. So I'm gonna be honest with you with that, right? But let me show you something. Let's see if we can find go a little more deeper into it. Let's just see if we can find, because sometimes you can just find these ancient lines. Let me show you something. Go up a little bit. So right here, I'm gonna go up. So, they say it's the Lebanese. They say it's the Lebanese, but I don't agree. I just don't agree. I don't agree that the J lineage is Canaanite. You understand? I don't agree. I don't agree that the J lineage is Canaanite. The reason why is because the Canaanite will be a Hamite. That's important to understand. The Canaanite would be a Hamite, and if J was a lineage, that would mean they would be Hamites. But that would make no sense. So it's actually you gotta dig deeper into these things for the sake of understanding. You gotta look at a little deeper. All right, very important when we think about those things, because we can take some things and run with it, but if we gotta look at the information, what the biblical information say, and connection to who's who for the sake of understanding. Because if we look right here, this is what we see. The comparison reveals that 93% of the genetic ancestry of people in Lebanon, right, came from the Canaanites. That's what they say, right? Think about that. That J2 they say is from Canaanites, but isn't that supposed to be? I'm gonna show you something. What's the problem with that? Let's go to. All right, let me put this screen back on right here. All right, so obviously, what are we seeing that they're saying? Right, I just want you to understand that you gotta have discernment with these things. Is J2 Canaanites? Is J2 Canaanites the J lineage? Canaanites? No, that's ridiculous. So they say the Lebanese, but they say the Lebanese are Canaanites. But understand, what is this? What is this Aaron lineage? You want to know what this Aaron lineage is? It's a J lineage. The J's are connected on a tree. The J lineage is connected on a tree. It's a fact. The J lineage is connected on a tree. You can see right here. It says right here. It says just talks about it in Pacific. The JP58, also called J1C3, while other Kohanim share a different ancestry, such as haplogroup group J21. What, isn't that the Canaanites? You see what's happening here? Isn't that's it's important to understand. This is why I'm studying this, because these things get pretty crazy if you just take it flat base, what they say. If you take it off of what they say, then you're going to run into this twisting knot that doesn't make any sense. You'll see that they'll say this is what they say. They say the Arabs is J. They say that the Jews are J. They'll say that the Canaanites are J. And then they'll say, and then we find that the all types of things like this. And what's the problem with that? The problem is that you can't have Canaanites J2 and have Israelites J. You just can't. That makes no sense at all in any sense of a haplogroup tree, because it means that they're the same. That's a problem for the sake of understanding. That means that the people that are there are actually going to be not Hamites. It's important to understand they're actually Japhetic, because we know that J is confirmed Japhetic. It's without a doubt that is confirmed Japhetic. The J lineage is a Japhetic lineage that's confirmed by geneticists as being Japhetic. That's why I have that E and that J lineage thing that you can see. Very important to see. This is what a rabbit trail looks like of confusion, right? And the reason why that I'm bringing this, because this is just a piece. This is just a small piece. Like I'm not saying just take this and run with it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not obviously Flavio Josephus is one historian. That's one historian. I'm not saying take one historian's quote and run with it. No. I'm telling you to look at the whole picture. I'm telling you to look at not just genetics, but look at the whole picture because there's more historical quotes than just this. This is just one historical quote, right? We can match if we understand who is who and who are the Jews and look at their genetics, and then we see this and then match this what they're saying, right? It's actually telling us they're trying to go down the Euphrates, and we know that those tribes are not in Asia and Europe. Let's just use some common sense. Let's just use some common sense. Do you think that they would dare say just in this area? The way that Israel is? Do you think they would not scatter out and settle in these areas? You think they wouldn't go into the Romans when everything was looking fancy in the Romans area, when the Jews were settling up here? You think no Jew would open his door and say, "Come and live with me, brother of one of the tribes that's lost," or saying, "Hey, you should live over here. Some of the Israelites are also over here." They wouldn't just stay in this area. That's not what would happen. In fact, we can follow the history of who was here. We don't have mention of Israelites in this area. Nowhere in history do we have any mention of anyone writing of Israelites anywhere in these areas. There's not mentioned anywhere. The Romans don't write it. If they was an innumerable number, the Romans would write it, right? Because what did Flavio Josephus says? He said that they're in right here, right? Immense multitude and not to be estimated by number. So that means the Jews knew where they were. The Jews knew where they were, but if they're in that much numbers, why didn't no one write about them? Because they weren't up there. They weren't up in this area. Because it says word for word on this writing, there are only two tribes in Asia and Europe, subject to the Romans or not. Only two tribes in Asia and Europe. That's a fact. Only two tribes in Asia and Europe. That's a fact. So we have to understand if they're in an innumerable number, you can't number them. They're not up here. It's important to understand. They're not in Asia or Europe. It's important to understand because they are on the other side of Euphrates. The other side of Euphrates, and that's evident by genetics. We got to look at the genetic information and we can connect the things, right? The carrier Syria, well, we're carried off. Yes, I recommend. So I recommend seeing a video because yes, this is one video. This is one video. I recommend seeing this one because this is actually touching on something here. Let me show you something.
Only natural quotes. So we say
Let me show you actually what are we looking at there because what we actually found was that multiple different even Jewish sources say that the people was in the upper area. I just want to show you this. They were in the area of Africa. This is actually what they record is in the area of thing on this question for them. I'm gonna show you something real fast once that thing pops up. But first, let me show you the rest of this. Then I'll show you something real fast.
Words you'll be known as ordained Christ.
So you have Hathros. That one right there was saying the Jewish people that the law. And this is further information in you can see right here. I see if I can open this. I'm not reading that second Ezra. Go down a little bit. See if I can find it. So here's a little something. This one just talks about the lost tribes and everything. It talks about where they're at. I'm gonna go down. All right, so right here. So this right here is a writing. You can see who is this? Let's see. Okay, so he says, so the Israelites were indeed taken to Assyria, but ended up in Africa. And this is further information in, you can see right here, in this little source he has. So he has something that's written by this rabbi. what they call him a rabbi and whatnot. He says, go down. He's basically taking a screenshot there. Dear Rabbi, hey, someone asked a question. He asked a question right here. I recently saw a document that explained that the lost 10 tribes of Israel were exiled to the Far East and settled along the Silk Road as far as China. So he says this person thinks that the 10 tribes went to China. What do Jewish sources say about this? So this is just someone asking a question and says, are they or their customs really Jewish? What does Judaism say about whether the law or whether these lost tribes will even reunite with the Jewish people? Thanks in advance and taking the time to take the time to answer. Okay, watch he answers here. He's gonna write to him. This is a so-called Jewish rabbi. Watch what he says here. Going down. Watch what he says here. I want to show you here what happens. Where were the tribes exiled? King of Assyria, watch what it says here, carried Israel away into Assyria, right? Took them to Assyria. They did what they did with them. And it says, in addition to Assyria, they were also exiled through Egypt. Where's Egypt? Well, that should be easy, right? Because Egypt is in Africa. See what's happened there? Who was sent into Africa? The 10 tribes. He just said the 10 tribes were sent into Africa. That's what he just said there. Single-handedly, this rabbi just said they were sent into Africa. To Pathros. See what's there? Right there, we're saying on the eastern, the southern Nile. All right. So all we gotta do, Pathros. That one I'm not super familiar with. I have an idea. Patros on the southern Nile to Patros. Patros. They went into Egypt and went downward. Actually, are beyond the Euphrates, the locals, but they'll have something different about them. Something be much different. Okay, see, that video is a talk of some things, and here's the part that video was specifically on. That part I'm going to show you. I'm going to press play, and this is the part that video that 30-minute video is specifically on and breaking down the rivers of Euphrates, because the rabbi here says it himself. This is a rabbi. Watch what he says here. Watch what the rabbi says. So the 10 tribes are down there. So why are they lost? Okay. So you can see what he's saying there. He's saying, and to the mountains of Western Iran. Similarly, the famous Jewish historian, Roman times, Flavius. All right, so this is going to be Flavius Josephus Flavius. The 10 tribes are beyond the Euphrates. Look what Josephus writes. He says Josephus even knew what the 10 tribes were in the iniquities, right? In its antiquities or what have you. Watch what it says here. The 10 tribes are beyond the Euphrates until this day, and are immersive multitude, and are in immersive in multitude whose numbers cannot be estimated. So if their numbers are so large and they're in Africa, so obviously immerse for the sake of understanding, this is a clear understanding. This is just one piece, right? That's more. You got to see this video. You got to see this. We already went through the history that's what Assyria does. They misplace people. We went through the whole history. We went through the whole thing. We even talked about on their little tablet and everything. We looked at the kingdom. We looked at what they did. They brought the people. Yes, they brought them to Assyria. They did. They brought the people to Assyria. They caught the people. They brought them to Assyria. We can follow the history. We can follow those things. But when they brought them to Assyria, they do a thing that they love to do. They had a hobby of displacing people. That's a fact. That's what they used to do, and that's what they did. They displaced people. And you got to see this. You got to see this so you can understand what's actually going on, and you can see what they even look like. Right? Look at the Assyrian. Let me see if I can find it on here. Right? Look at the Assyrian stones. Look at the stones on the Assyrian when they had captured the people. Right? Look what it looks like. Right? You can see it yourself if you take a look at these things. Right? You can see what they look like. They have a certain feature to them that's very distinct. Very important to see that. And that's what you're seeing there. You got to see that and pay attention to these things. So you got to take a look at this video. You got to understand this video. Otherwise, you're not going to understand what it's saying here. They're not in Europe and Asia. They're not in Europe and Asia. They're not even subject to them, right? They're not in Europe and Asia. That's important to understand. In Armenia, remember, it's important to understand the history of Armenia, because you're going to say, oh, well, they could have been in the area. You got to understand the history and genetics. You got to look at genetics. You got to look at these things. Take a look at these things. If you take a look at these things, you'll see some interesting things. All right. You find something's off. You find something's off, and you got to go. You got to look at you got to study yourself. You can't just take someone else's word. You got to study it yourself. You got to look at this information yourself, and then once you understand, especially when you understand Habakkuk groups, then we can have more deeper conversations on these things. But you got to understand, they're not in Asia. They're not in Asia. This is Asia too. All this is Asia. They're not in Asia. They're not in Asia. They're not in Europe. They're not in Asia or Europe. All right, not in Asia. They're not in Europe. They're just not there. All right, they were beyond the Euphrates, downwards. It's a fact. Let's see. Maybe we adopt new cultures. Yeah, it doesn't matter where. Rabbi, who knows nothing about true God says. Well, you got to look at what he's quoting the same thing. Flavor. He's quoting you got to look at his writings. You can't just hate them just because they don't believe what you believe, right? We actually quote a lot of historians that don't believe the Bible. I quote many historians that don't believe the Bible. That doesn't make them ignorant or stupid, but that means that they just aren't going to be saved. That doesn't mean that their information has less value, right? I'm not going to, obviously, I believe that they're Turks. I'm not going to knock the rabbi just because he may or may not believe something other than what I believe, right? I'm just going to say that if he don't believe in Christ, he's not going to make it, right? I'm not going to say that I'm not going to take his information because he don't believe in God. That's not how we do studying of information. But we got to understand in simplicity that his sources can be cited. It can be cited, it can be searched. That's what you just seen. That's why we went and see that rivers beyond Euphrates. We went and looked at that actual word for word writing that it says right there. They're not in Asia. They're not in Asia. It's important to understand that all these were gathered together, right? In Babylon, what you say they were in Babylon. This is Babylon. No one's here. No one was in this area. No one was in this area, right? They were not here. These groups gathered here. It never said, there was nowhere said during the time of the Persians that they were here, that the 10 tribes were here. Nowhere was that written. Nowhere was that ever written that the 10 tribes were here. That was not written. They're not in Asia and Europe. They're not in Asia and Europe. They're not here in Babylon. Otherwise, they would have left with them. They would have left with them if they were all together. You think they would have not seen all the Jews gathered together and say, you know what? We're going to Jerusalem too. We're going to go down there too. We're going to make our way over there. We don't never ever see them ever in a confrontation. We never see them talk. We never see them even mentioned up there. We never see them mentioned. They're not in Asia and Europe. It's a fact. They're not in Asia and Europe. It's important to understand that. If they're not in Asia and Europe, then you know where they're not? They're not where you think they are. It's important to understand that. They're not there. They're not in Asia and Europe. So if they're not in Asia and Europe, then they're down here, right? It's important to understand that. That's undeniable, right? And we can match that with genetics. We can match that with all types of information, right? We can bring all those things together. So and we got to understand Armenia, right? Don't think that Armenia was not subject to the Romans. That's important to understand. Don't think that these were not under his authority. Edom, Herod, you don't think Herod that was reigning in Judah, you don't think his descendants that were reigning all over in that area, what do you think he ruled at? What do you think Herod actually ruled? Armenia. Armenia was in fact, let me show you. Let's see what it says about Armenia. Let's go to the Jewish library. Let's see what it says about Armenia. Let's see the history behind Armenia. Let's see what's said about Armenia. All right. I'm gonna show you something. Okay. Here's one, but this I'm finding another one. You can see right here. It just talks about Armenia. Armenia is linked with Uz, the anti-Jewish attitudes prevailing in Eastern Byzantine, right? Eastern Byzantine, Armenia, right? Providence is made, right? You can see right here going down. They identified it with the daughter of Edom, right? The daughter of Edom that dwells in the land of Uz. You see what's going on there? Because who was in Armenia? Who was ruling Armenia? Edom. Edom was ruling Armenia. And we can even talk about Amalek, right? Who is Amalek? Amalek's got up there. They end up reigning up there. You can see right here. Let's look at this little history, right? It talks about here what we just seen. It says just talks a little bit about Amalek and whatnot. Right here, it says the Uz Armenia of let's go like this. Abraham Fossil, it says, is however the Anatolia region. You see what's saying there? The Anatolian region of Constantinople, right? Armenia is also sometimes called Amalek. What did you just say there? Armenia is sometimes called Amalek, right? It's very important to understand. The reason why it's important, you got to understand, right? We got to pay attention real fast, right? Armenians is also sometimes called Amalek in some sources, and Jews often refer Armenians as Amaleks. Jews often refer Armenians as Amaleks. Okay, let's pay attention. Why am I showing you this? Do you believe the Ashkenazi Jews are Jews? Who are the Armenians? Do you know who the Armenians are? We just read who the Armenians are. Let me just show you something so that we understand something, so that we can just cut off any type of false idea, period. Right? You got to pull up a Habakkuk group and look at a Habakkuk group and make sure you got an understanding of it. But let me show you something. It doesn't matter which one we pull up, because there's a lot of things where we have to pull up one Habakkuk group. But let me show you something. We don't need to pull up one Habakkuk group for the understanding of what I'm going to show you here. Let me show you something. Just want to show you something so you're understanding this. Why I showed you Armenia. Why you're saying Armenia is upper in area and this that whatnot. I understand that. Let me show you something. Well, for the sake of understanding, let me show you this still, for the sake of understanding. Let me show you this. As if you don't believe that they are the Jews or not, I just want to show you this for the sake of just for clarity so that we have this ground understand, right? Who the Armenians, who they are, and we can find what geneticists say about them, right? We can go take a look because I'm glad you said that. Now it's going to make it easier to give an understanding here. Let's take a look here, right? Let's just take a look at this thing. If you don't believe the Jews to be, okay, that's a great thing. If you don't believe that the Ashkenazi, you're already one step ahead, okay? Because look what it says right here about the Armenians. In fact, there is no major Y haplogroups, no major Y haplogroups found among Ashkenazi Jews that are not found among Armenians and vice versa. That means Armenians are Ashkenazis. There's actually this vice versa for the sake of understanding. You see what's going on there? And that's important to know because this is actually going to be understood as there's a group that's mixed among them that are Turks. It's important to understand, but they're also mixed among many different types of people. It's a mingled people. That's what they are. They're a mingled peoples. You see what's going on there? Every Y haplogroup group is found among Armenians, and Ashkenazi. But I'm glad that you know that. So now that you know this, that this is not true, let's understand this in simplicity, right? What Y chromosome haplogroup group does Israel have? Because they have to have one father, right? What Y chromosome haplogroup group does Israel have? After all the studying we did, it's without a doubt because we already confirmed that E1B1B is the Ishmaelites, the Arabs. So that means they have to be connected to E1B1B. You know what's connected to E1B1B, but is his own lineage? E1B1A. E1B1A and E1B1E, E1B1A and E1B1B are related. E1B1B is a lineage that's only, listen to me when I say this, right now, and the reason why this happened, we got to understand the history on how this happened, right? Let me go to this note. In fact, we don't need to go there. Let me go over here to this note. Let me show you something, right? And if you think that the people who are called the Negro are actually Israel, you're right, because we have historical documents that say the Negro is Israel. If you believe that, then let me show you something. Let me show you something. And don't believe me, understand when I say this. The 12 tribe chart is a false idea. It's important to understand that the 12 tribe chart is a false idea because Habakkuk groups. We have to understand Habakkuk groups. If we understand Habakkuk groups, every group who is related is going to be on one haplogroup group. It's important to understand. You can't have a son on another haplogroup group. That's impossible. And if you ever do a DNA test and your son's on another haplogroup group, you probably got to ask yourself a question. It's going to be probably a major question in your life. That'd be rough. But obviously, a haplogroup group, you're going to always be on the same haplogroup group because it always goes father to son, father to son, father to son. But let me show you something. Let me show you something. I just want to go to a certain map here. Okay, right here. Okay, why did I want to go to this? Because if you believe, right, that this is Ishmael, this and whatnot, and you understand the J lineage can't be them, which majority of them there is, then you know that E is actually the lineage. It's E1B1A. And all you had to do was look at a map. All you do is study a little bit of information. Where do we see an innumerous number of the same haplogroup group? If we think about the E lineage, when we think about E1B1A, down here, down in these areas, do you know that all these besides little small patches of B's and A's, those are going to be your Hamitic lines. Those are your Hamitic lines. Because we can actually see E and D is connected, and D is actually Japanese. And E and D is connected to Japheth, more closer than the A and B. These are separate. These are actually separate branches. E and D actually breaks off from CT and CF. Well, not CF, my bad, not CF. CF is actually a different lens, but it breaks off from CT. From CT, you get CF and you get DE. They break off from the same area and they come together. So you can see right here, this is actually important because this is the innumerable, it couldn't even be counted. How big is Africa? Do you know how big Africa is? Let's look at that. To have that many people like that, let's take a look. Let's say, Africa size comparison. Look at this. That's Russia. No, that's China. You see what you're seeing there? You got Spain, France that can fit in here. Germany can fit in here. Italy can fit in here. United States can fit in here. Obviously Europe can fit in here. India can fit in here. India, China can fit in here. UK can fit in here. You see what's going on here? China, the whole part of China, two parts of China can fit in here. See what's going on here? And all of this from, let's just say, all of America, all of China, all of this, all of America, all of China. I'm trying to escape out of this thing. Right? All of America and all of China, if we go to this right here, fill this whole area. And they can't be numbered. What did Flavio Josephus say? He says right here, and are in immense numbers, right? Immense of numbers, and it cannot be estimated by numbers. Can't even be estimated. You cannot estimate that size. That size is large. You see that? You cannot estimate that. So where would they be if you can't estimate them? It would be in the south. It would be southward as we follow what it says right there. They're not in Asia and Europe. They're not in Asia and Europe, subject to the Romans or not. Understand that. Because understand, if they were up here anywhere, that defeats the purpose of him saying they're not in Asia and Europe, subject to the Romans or not. Because believe me, understand this when I say this, they would be in an area of Roman. If they was over here, they would spread out. They wouldn't stay together. That's just what Israel, they would constantly multiply. If they was in unnumberable numbers, you can't have an innumberable number, basically unnumberable over here. You can't have them over here unnumberable. Understand? And we don't have any records of them being over here. None. There's no records of them being over here. There's no records of them being anywhere over there. It's important to understand. But we have records by Flavius Josephus that they went southwards in innumerable numbers. Right? They can't be counted. There's too many of them. Right? Persians who were also Semitic. Okay, yeah, but during the time of, you got to remember, Persia wasn't Semitic anymore after a while, right? Persia actually started mixing a lot, especially like when we think of Cyrus, right? We know his mother was Media, right? They were mixing with Media. They were mixing with Japhetics, right? Media, that's just Japheth. Persia was mixing together, and that, in fact, let's talk about some history, right? Cyrus, when he got there, Media came together with them because his mother was Median, and they thought that was uniting Persia and Media together, right? Because we can look at on a map what that looks like, right? Persia and Media, and when Media, the leader of Persia, came, Media thought that that was them coming together. That's why they call it Media in Persia, the kingdom of Media in Persia with Cyrus the Great, right? But he was Persian. But these end up mixing more and more over time because of that, because they thought that they were one, and they start mixing more and more and more and more and more. It's very important to understand, right? So you're gonna have a lot of mixing with that, right? And then you're gonna have that kingdom that's reigning over here. And who you think is gonna win the mix between these two mixing? Who you think is gonna be bled out? Media, which is this size, or Persia, which is this size? Persia is going to be bled out. And that's what happened. It's important to understand the major groups that took over here was one other group. Obviously, you got to also count the later conquests that came in and sweep through from the Seljuk Turks that came in and settled in these areas. Obviously, that's the Jade lineage that came in. And a lot of these are going to be mixed with that. And we can follow the history all the way up to Iran. We can follow the history all the way up there. And these are actually going to be media. All these going to be originally media. That means they are what? If that's media, right? We can go to Japheth's line. We can see media, right? Mahdi, for the sake of understanding, that's going to be your Japhetic line, right? It's going to bleed it out. It's important to understand. So even so, that they're way over there, but you're saying we got to understand. This is Asia. This is Asia. This is Asia. This is Europe up there. This is Asia. This is Europe, right? They can't be up here and in numerous numbers, right? If they was only in a small patch of area, they'd be counted. They'll be able to be counted, but they can't be counted. They can't. They just can't be counted. Therefore, it's important to understand they're not in Asia and Europe. They're not in Asia and Europe. We also got to look at their genetics, right? Now that we actually understand, we agree on that, we understand these things. Let me just close this and make it simple. Let's just make it really simple and understand it. Let's take a look. As I'm not mad at you, brother. As we, for the sake of understanding, it's all about bringing clarity. It's all about bringing clarity. So we got to understand. We can actually find out. Let's see. I want to show you a interesting paper. Let me show you something. How do we know that this is the line of the Jews? How do we know that this is the real line of the Jews? Because we can look at a genetic study. Here's a genetic study on the Jews of Saint Tome and Principe. We can look at historical documents. We can confirm that this is them. Even the geneticists, they say these are them. It's without a doubt. They even confirm it themselves that those 2,000 children that was taken there, forcefully baptized and put on the islands of Principe during the time of 1492, right? Very important to understand. We got the genetic study. And what lines do we see that they have? E1B1A. They have E1B1A, and that's that number, that's that group that can't be numbered. That's the Jews. These are the real Jews. This is the lineage of the Jews. This E1B1A, this is the real lineage of the Jews that were taken to the island down in Africa. And now, obviously, we can follow the history of the Jews. Yes, we can see the history of the Jews. But there's also history of the 10 tribes. We got to understand, and they're going to have the same haplogroup group. In fact, let me show you something. I was working with a brother that we ended up talking the other day, and this is what we found out. This is what we found out there. I had to basically buy some information that's over here. Let me go down to it. It talks about these different types in the land, right? It's actually important to understand that one group is Israel and one group, let me just show you here. One group is Israel and one group is actually going to be Judah. Let me show you which one's Judah. I'm gonna show you how we know. I never thought I would actually figure something like this out, but thanks to the brother on our page, DNA 808, we end up understanding this. Watch what you see here. It talks about these different groups. It says right here. Now, Bantu means people. It says all people speaking populations are characterized by a very high frequency of two Y chromosome haplogroups, E1B1A, and its diverse E1B17, for the sake of understanding. Now, obviously, what it's actually talking about is, let me just show you here at the top for clarity, put some clarity on it. Let me just go. In fact, let me open it here. I'll go to it here, so we just go right to what we were talking about. I'll show you right what we was talking about, so you can see that. Uh, let's see. Let me show you something. Whoops. E1, B1, A7. Okay, let me show you something here. So this is what we end up looking at. We end up finding out. All right. So this is what we found. Let me just go to this because even when I'm talking with the brethren, I like to cite sources and whatnot because you never know, such as like this, to go back. He just asked a random question. He says, he wanted to know some things like basically wanted to see if which line is he just had some ideas, just some idea, just something to test. He's like, which line is Judah? So I said, we got a DNA test from, this is your DNA test right over here, right? We had a DNA test from Santa May e Principe, right? We had to get that DNA test. We had looked at that, which we were just looking at earlier. And what we noted, what we end up noting, long story short, is that if we look at the paper, it has a certain number there, right? And this actually matters. These numbers actually matter. I didn't know at first, but because I didn't think that we would find such a thing. I didn't think that we can actually locate Judah and the separation of Judah and Israel. I think that we actually can do that. But I'm gonna show you that he ended up going over that, and we actually found that. Let me show you something. Let's go down to it right here. So remember this. Let me just go up a little bit. Remember this. You see this right here, M19 or M191. You see it right there. That's actually going to be. Let me go down to it right here. Let me actually open this. I'll let it open so we can see that. So M191. Shalom, family. Shalom, shalom. Amen, amen. Yah is first. Amen, amen. Okay, so look at this. M191. You see that M191? M191. That's E1B17 or E1B1F, right? That's what it's now. Now it's letters now, right? It's not numbers anymore. It's actually letters. Everything's going to be E1B11 and then a letter. That's what every single lineage from this line is going to be a E1B11. No one is E1B1A. They're E1B1A1. My bad. E1B1A1. No one just E1B1A because it goes E1B1, E1B1A, and then E1B1A1. And these are all ancient branches. All three of these are ancient branches that no one is today. But these right here are going to be later branches that we have. And this is going to be that line right here, the F lineage. This is actually Judah. This line is Judah. I never thought that we would find a sub branch for Judah, but this is the sub branch for Judah. Now, is it possible for it to be any of these? Maybe. But from Santa May Principe, the Havical group that came down to it, if you're under the E1B1A7 or if you're under E1B1A1F, then you're Judah. That would be a line of Judah. E1B1A1G, that's going to be of Israel. That's going to be your line of Israel. That's what this is actually what we find in the land. We find either E1B1A7 or E1B1A8. Or we see the E1B1A1F or E1B1A1G. That's what we end up finding in the land. So this is actually what we found in Principe. These were the Jews, and they were E1B1A7. It's interesting because I like the number 7. So it's actually really interesting to see how that ended up to line it up. M191. That's what we ended up finding when we was looking at some things. And what I was doing was we were just studying it. And I was like, I didn't think that we would find, something like that. So I just put a note there. And I noted that right here where I put the arrow, that was Judah, and this box that was Ephraim. So it was really interesting breaking down some of the subclides and everything. I never thought to get detailed like that, but the reason why I want you to know that is because that's Judah. That's the line of Judah. That E1 line, and you're gonna have, obviously, let me show you. We can look at it and see there's different lineages in Africa, right? We can see those different lines and everything. Let me show you that, right? This is what it would look like. An idea, right? These are your E1B1B. These are your real Ishmaelites. You find them a lot up here, right? You find them in these areas, and whatnot. A lot over here and a lot over here. This we can match that with history with the Arabia Felix, how they got in here, because a lot of them over here. You can see a lot of them in these areas. Those are your Ishmaelites, E1B1B. But your E1B1A is down here. This is where your E1B1A is, over here. And let's see. You can see, for example, this is from a real genetic site. You can see here, this is what you commonly see. E1B1A7, which is Israel. I mean, that's Judah, right? That's actually going to be blue. Everywhere you see blue, they got mixed with Judah. Judah ended up mixing with them. They ended up coming down there. And we already know that that's true because down here, there was a king of Judah reigning over here. We got a historical document that says a king of Judah was reigning down here. It's a historical document with that recorded. And you could also see E1B1A8 right here. These are actually going to be you see your red, green, and yellow. Red, green, and yellow. Your red, green, and yellow is actually going to be your 10 tribes. So you can see what's going on there. And then you have I'm not really 100% sure on this one, the YXE1B1A, whatnot. Maybe I'll look that up sometime and see that in more detail. But that's E1B1A, and I'll see what's up with that. Maybe I'll look it up now, just for curiosity. Uh, I want to write it exactly as it is written down. Okay. I'm just curious if that's what I think it is. I don't know if I'll be able to find it like this. I'll probably have to look on one of this other site that I go on my phone. I'm gonna look for it later when I go and search it. As I'm pretty sure it has a different name. I'm pretty sure it has a different name by now, but I'm not 100% sure. Pretty sure it has a different name. Yeah. I don't think it's this one. Yeah. I don't think it's this one. I was just curious. I was just curious. Just curious, just curious, just curious. It's not even on there. Just curious. Might be a little hard to find. I'm wondering what that is, what lineage it is. But the best way to look is just to look on the site itself. And the reason why I want to show you this because this is the lineage. This is the line of Israel. This is the line that connects to the Ishmaelites throughout the history of them. Let me see. Right here. That's why I always even images. I try to with images cite the images as well. Okay, see, I don't know. Let's go. Doesn't give me much information on that. Actually, let me try one thing. I think that will work. Nope. Yeah. So I'm at the make sure I sign on this thing on my little thing. Let me see if I can find it on here. Actually, I don't think this is it. All right. Yeah, it looks like they only give a little piece of information. I was just curious on that last one. Just curious on that last one because sometimes you get that. Let's see if they give it. It's usually not too hard. It says because I'm not 100% sure because these letters look so tiny. But I was just curious on that. I'm gonna leave this open. I'm gonna look at it just extra detail, extra fine work detail and whatnot. It probably is just a small thing, but we'll see. I just want to see what's up with that. Because you can look on another one too, just to get clarity. There's a lot of E1B1A down there. It's mostly E1B1A down there for the sake of understanding. Masses of them. So that's what I was looking at. I just wanted to see those SNPs. You know, that the SNP, when I had looked at that, I was just saying, let's take a look and just see that. Now, the reason why this is interesting, because we know that this area was taken over by the Portuguese, and we can find their habitat groups down there. We see that their H is down there. We see some of their Y's down there, right? We see there are lineages down there. These are and they even say it themselves on one of these, right here. It says the second most common habitat group in São Tomé and Príncipe. It says is basically typical from Western Europe, right? Most likely carried by the Portuguese settlers in their genetic contribution to this population. So obviously, those are the Jews that were taken there by the Portuguese, because the Portuguese also show their genetics in the woodworks of them. So you can see what's going on there. My red Peter's instrument and mean what? Yep. Santo Tomé, Principe, they didn't mingle with slaves because that area it was a private island. If we actually look at the history behind Santo Tomé, Principe, they moved them there because they took 2,000 children. It was children. It was a private island of the Portuguese. And what they did in the island, they raised up the Jews there, and it's historically recorded that that was a private island, that the Jews were there, that stayed there, and they know that there's actual historic documents for those things, right? There's historic documents for those things, which you can see when we talk about those things, right? Several documents confirm that many of these children survived, right? They survived along with other settlers, mainly of African origin, right? Why do they have African origin? Who's the ones with the African origin? The Jews. Those are the ones with the African origin. How do we know? Because that's the ones they want to say that have African origin, but doesn't have an African origin. Understand that E1, the E lineage cannot be found in ancient Africa. You can't find an ancient E lineage in Africa. If they were in Africa, you would actually find ancient lineages of them, but you don't find them in Africa. They weren't always in Africa. They moved to Africa somehow, some way, right? And that's what if we look at the history and what it actually says, how did they get there, right? They was on the other side of Euphrates, and then we even can follow the history of the Jews, how they got to Africa, right? Their descendants, the Jews, they're descendants of the Negroes. We got a historical document that word for word tells you that they're descendant from the Negroes, because the document, that the way that we got the document is from a place. Make sure that's all good, everything right there. Okay, we got it from a place where, let me go over here. In fact, it's over here, right there. You can see this little document right here, and I'm gonna show you the site. I'm gonna show you the site where we got this and how we know that the Jews are actually related to the Negroes, because it says right here, it says the Black Portuguese, as they were called. It says, and the Jews of Legado, who are despised even by the very Negro and are descended. It says they are descended from them, right? Those F's look like an S. They are descended from the Negroes. You see what's going on there? Let me show you something. Let's look at that source. Because we can look at what Herodotus look. We can look at what a fifth. What was it? How you say that? Let me just open this real fast. Let me go up here and show you something. If I have it up here, I want to show you something. I think historical documents is important, and genetics is important too when studying these things, because it can be very edifying, I think. Let me go up a little bit. We also got documents that say there was a king in. You can see right here. This is older document. You can see a Jewish king of Ghana. There's a Jewish king of Ghana that was terminated in 1492. So Ghana had a Jewish king. There was a Jewish king in the land of Africa, recorded in the land of Africa. But let me show you something. I want to show you what Tacitus, the historian Tacitus, in 55 AD, what did he write? He wrote that the Judeans were of Ethiopian origin. That's basically saying they're African, because everything down here was called Ethiopia. If you look at an old map, everything down here was called Ethiopia. And he said the Jews seemed like they was of Ethiopian origin. Are you not as the Ethiopians to me? See what's going on there? Let me just show you something right here. Um, in fact, let me go down to it because I wanted to open that thing, but I didn't. It didn't open. Let me go to that this right here. I just want to show you the site. In fact, I open it right there. All right. I want to show you what's up with this site, right? You can see, you can go to about. This is what I like to do sometimes on sites and learn a little bit about what they're doing and whatnot. Let me see. Let's go to home. Let me see. Okay, do you see what it's saying here? Let's see what they say about their little thing, right? They talk about how they began, right? They talk about how they are a private organization, and everything. It says their initial focus has been on preserving and providing access to digital books and obviously journals and context from all those members and whatnot, library collections and whatnot. And then it lets us know their aim, the member libraries aim to build basically a bunch of stuff. Let me see if I'm going to find a certain piece of this. So that's that around the world. I want to find it. I want to find not this one. I want to find about me so you can see what they're about for the sake of understanding, because it's more clear to get a direct piece of that. In fact, I forget exactly how to get to the about on this. Let me see. R, this and that. Digital library. Let's go to this welcome. I don't know if it's this welcome or not. Maybe it's this. I don't know. Maybe it's this. Okay. So you can see right here, it just talks a little about them. Digital library says preserves and provides lawful access to 17 million digital items. Right? These are going to be real digital copies of scholarly work because it says where it's founded and everything. Actually, this is what I want to see. It was founded in 2008. Right? It says this little site. It says is a not-for-profit, right, collaborative with academic and research libraries providing 17 plus million digital items, right? And then we see right here what it says. They offer reading access to the fullest extent allowable by the US copyright law, right? They're bringing forth these things and says access to entirely, and you see scholarly research, right? Scholarly research is what you're seeing here. And because that's what their aims is. They're under the aims of scholarly, not corporate interests. See what I'm saying there? So they're bringing forth some books that you usually won't see, right? They're actually bringing forth some books that you usually won't see. So that's what, and you know this is old because it actually uses those ancient old letters in English, those old F's and stuff. That's something you got to kind of know a little bit about how to read them and whatnot. Otherwise, you're like, what is this saying, right? What is this? Ban it. I don't know what to say, but it's actually saying banished, with that little fancy S. So that's how you know this is old, for the sake of understanding. And that's what this is. It's a quote. You can see it yourself, 8 17 50 1754. And it just lets us know that they're all related, and they were in Africa. There was a lot of Jews in Africa, and there was obviously Israel in Africa too. Israel was in Africa. And we know that because we can see it. We can see that. And remember, what size is that? That's America right there in China all together. That's America and China together. And that's what we see. One pure line of people, one pure group of people. That's what you see. Not that, in fact, they themselves say they're not that diverse. They're all the same. Most of them are all the same in that area. That's why they call it the people's expansion or the Bantu's expansion. And the Bantu actually means Bantu. That word means people in the Zulu language. But that was given to the people by the colonists. They called them peoples. That's what they called them. This and that. Yeah. Let's say some Jews figure that I mean again, all right. Yeah. They were, yeah. Yeah, that's actually important to understand. If they say in context, how can you even use that in context? How can you say Ethiopian origin under context? Think about that. Think about that. That's just obviously clearly you have to understand clearly what is it. Can an Ethiopian? What does the scripture say? Can an Ethiopian change his skin? Can an Ethiopian change his skin? Why would they? Why would Herodotus even humor that comment unless they looked Ethiopian? If they had Ethiopian origin, that's because they looked Ethiopian. That's important to understand. If they looked Ethiopian, then it's because they match what it says that cannot change. An Ethiopian cannot change its color. So that's important to understand. They're in numerous numbers. In numerous numbers. And one more thing. And one more thing for the sake of understanding. Can do we have any historian that said that Jews and people were down there in Africa? Do we have any evidence of people being down there in Africa? Do we have any historian that says that? Yes. We have a historian that actually verifies these things that's being said. Because a lot of times when people talk, people have a color view. You know, it don't matter how they are; they can be completely black. But if you're not a certain color to them, you probably don't seem like you got a lot of information. But let me show you something. That's why we always hold these things dear, because we know that the world that we live in is full of lies. It's full of lies. We know it. We know it's true, but we got to prove these things and hold fast to that which is true. Let me just show you something, as I think it's important to know truth. You know, let me just show you something right here. Right, I'm gonna show you that I'm showing you a real historian. I showed people this before, but I want to show you that this is a real historian, so you don't think I'm just pulling up some random person. This is gonna be a real historian. You can look him up right here. He's a historian. You see there, and his study is actually going to be in Jewish studies. Right, he's in some universities he was at. Right, some different universities and whatnot. Right. All right, so let's see what he says here concerning different areas. Let's see what he says here. I want to show you what he says.
Some of my recent work, if you read the hybrid very attentively, you'll have to go to the footnotes. You will see there's got a lot of evidence produced for black Jewish communities in different parts of West Africa, which are not sort of based upon a particular reading of tribal history, let's put it like that, but are based on fairly hard historical fact. And this hard historical fact is the expulsion of the Jews from Spain and from Portugal at the end of the 15th century, subsequent to which a lot of Jews settled, first of all, in northwest Africa, places like Senegal, in the islands, which I'm sure you know about, Saint Tomé and Principe.
Yes, sir.
Principally. And then, less known, along the coast of Guinea, so that in the middle of the 16th century, 1560 to be precise, the Portuguese Archbishop of Goa in India proclaimed that Judaism is a kind of horrible illness which has killed millions of people throughout history, and the result of being Jewish was to be covered in shame, to fail in everything, even among the black Jews of Guinea. So, in other words, the existence of Jews in the western part of Africa was absolutely accepted at the time by the likes of the Portuguese Archbishop of Goa.
So according to the Archbishop of Goa, that was over here, right? Because Goa's over here. There was an area that was very dear right here, Goa. This is a very dear place that was connected to the Portuguese. You can see that in the history, right? He said that they recognize that there are going to be Jews down here. Now, if there's Jews down here, why would the Jews be settling down here? Why are they getting comfortable down here? Who you else think is down here? An innumerous number of people are down here. If the Jews are down here and their genetics match with the people down here, then it's important to understand the Jews match with the people down here, and we see that they are called black. For sake of understanding, we know that they were in this area. They were in this area, it's without a doubt. So it's important to understand that we see even historians confirm that they were down here, and that there were people down here, and they're related. Their genetics are related. All their genetics are related. That's a fact. That's a fact to what he just said. As they are not be able to be numbered, right? They are not able to be numbered. That's important to understand. That's a fact. That's why it's important. It's important to go about these things thoroughly and carefully, for sake of understanding. It's very important to go about these things carefully. But now let's take a look. Let's take a look at one more thing. Let's just understand this. Let's understand this. So there's on the Havical group tree, right? This is actually by a geneticist, for the sake of understanding. There's 3 splits, right? Ham, Shem, and Japheth, right? Ham, Shem, and Japheth, you got 3 splits. And where do we see those lineages? Where do we see 3 splits? You got your A's and your B's, right? Your A's and your B's is one separate line, and you got your D's and your E's, right? Those are going to be another separate line, and then you're going to have all your CFs. These are going to be your CF lineages down here. You see what's going on there? Those are going to be one lineage. There's going to be one line, and these are going to be another line, for the sake of understanding. So, what's important also to know about this? What's also important to know about this? You need to make sure you understand, without a doubt, that from CT, which is not actually mentioned right here, but is a branch. It's a branch that breaks off. That's why these are separate branches, right? You see separate branches here. What you're actually going to see is that from CT, you get Japhetic lines, which is your CF, and you get your DE, right? You get your DE from those lineages. And that's without a doubt, because we know we can actually open it up on Family Tree. We can open that up ourselves and see that. That's why I recommend seeing, let me close these, we don't need these now, right? We got to understand these writings. But let me show you something. Well, yes, that's why you gotta know what they look like. You gotta know a little history, so you don't be tricked, right? You don't be tricked. We know what they look like. We know what they look like, and we know where they went. Let me show you. I go to this one. I just gotta go to something right here. I clicked the wrong one. I meant to click this. Let me show you something. If you want to know the understanding to this video right here summarizes it all. It's one of, we just did it. It summarizes the whole thing, what we're talking about. I just wanted to go to
Right here is higher
Oh,
for the
of
ones in
course,
Egypt
I
right
did
here
that.
and certain ones. So
I'm gonna have to make sure I put something on there that's supposed to be there, because I meant to put a different thing in the link. I put something else.
homeland.
I put something else in the link, but I'm gonna add something to there. But what I wanted to add was, let me just double see. In fact, it's right here. It's on this one, right here. This is what I want to see. Let me just show you something. I'm gonna show you on the Havical group tree. I just want to show you how CF makes DE and the other lineages. Now I already talked about A and B, how it doesn't go into CT and BT. I'm not gonna talk about it right now. I'm just gonna let those be. All right, so here's CF. I'm close CF, and here's CT. I'm gonna close DE. So from CT, you're gonna get 2 lineages, right? From CT, you're gonna get your CF lines, and you're gonna get your DE. We already confirmed that CF is Japhetic, because that's gonna be your J lineages, right? These are gonna be your Japhetic lines, which is all right. It's just true. It's Japhetic lines, right? There's your IJ right there, your I and your J. Your I is going to be the Indo-European, right? And then you're going to have your J, which is your Turkish lines. You're going to have your Turkish lines. Let's go up a little bit. We already confirmed that. Now let's take a look here, right? CT makes DE. There's your DE lines. Now let's look at the E lines. Okay, here's your E lines and everything. Now, it's probably not clear to see, but there's going to be there's different lines, A and B and whatnot. It's not clear to see on this thing. So I'm gonna go over here. What I really wanted to show you, I want you to pay attention to that split of right here from CT, right? Your DE and your CF, right? Those are gonna be the two different ones. And also from your BT, you're gonna get B and A, right? Those are gonna be different ones. Now the reason why I wanted to show you that is because if you go here, right, you have a split, you have a separation of this group and this group. This group and this group are separate, right? D and E and this one are separate. And then you're going to have your A and B, which is going to be, that's going to be Ham, Shem, and Japheth. That's your lines that you have, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, for the sake of understanding. Ham, Shem, and Japheth. That's very important to understand. So you got to understand that. Now, obviously, what we have to do to make sure that we understand truth, we have to have a holy conversation on these things. A lot of people, when they see these things, they don't want to have a conversation. They just want to say, I'll just put my ear away from this thing, dislike, and run away. That's a shame. They're never gonna learn nothing. They're not gonna learn any truth because they are scared to actually examine these things thoroughly. They're scared of it. They're scared to examine these things thoroughly and recognize that the E lineage is not an African haplogroup. It's not. It's a fact. You can read it yourself. Go look at the Natufian DNA and tell me what you find. It says according to ancient DNA analysis conducted, right? Ancient DNA, right? Even remember what I said where DNA came from? CT. It's a fact. They dislike it because they don't want it to be true. That's why they don't like it. CT E1B1A, right? It's gonna be your E1B1A lines, but it's gonna be your E1B1. That's your ancient lineages, right? Here's E1B1A1, right? Then you got your E1B1B1AB, which comes from E1B1 and CT. These aren't found in Africa, yet they call these African. They call this lineage African because now they're in Africa. But you gotta look at the history and see how did they get to Africa? How did they get down here? Was it always good up here? Was there no war up there? They was sent down. It's important to understand that's why you have multitudes of them, multitudes, and numerous multitudes. They are not in Asia and Europe. They are not in Asia and Europe, right? They're very, very, very important, right? That's why we have to look at these things carefully. You have to look at them in genetics, history, all types of understanding so that we can have understanding. And obviously, I didn't have to do this. We didn't have to have this conversation, but I want to have a conversation live so we can have the chance, right? And for anyone, that's wants to have a holy conversation, here's a link. We can have a holy conversation on these things. As I know, our brothers, we like to type and stuff and whatnot. But if you have confidence to have a holy conversation, sometimes it's better voice to voice. But that's not and evidence. Research into Hebrew Israelite belief and evidence. Yeah, you got to be careful when you think about Hebrew Israelite belief. We don't subscribe to a lot of the ideas for the sake of understanding. But we're definitely going to make sure that we prove all things and hold fast to what is true. Because understand, we do have facts that the lineage of E1B1B is the original Ishmaelites, and we have facts that the original E1B1A were actually, without a doubt, those were the real Israelites that were sent into captivity into all the nations. That's just a fact. And you've seen that actually mentioned by historians. Historians told you that they actually to Africa and they dwelled in that area. Yeah, as was found. Yeah. Yes. So obviously, this is just touching. This is very lightly touching on things. Um, but let's talk about evidence. What do you need to understand? What is it that you don't understand when you look at these genetic information? When you look at the finds, right? What did we just see with one of the papers that just said they're related, right? These ones are related to the Jews. They're related to them. That's what we've seen written in the paper. That's what we also seen a historian also say that that was a ruler of Jews down here in this area, And look how many this group we have. If we have Jews ruling down over, who were they ruling over? Who were the Jews ruling over when they were down here? When they put a Jew down here that was ruling, and in 1492 they stopped him from ruling. Who was he ruling over? There's a group that was down here that they were ruling over. You gotta understand that. That's a fact. They were ruling over this group down here, and they were not this right here. This family up here knew that they didn't want to be 100% with them. These were two different groups, and you can know who these groups are just by looking at the history. It's important to know that. You can look at the groups. You can see the groups in the history. All right. Obviously, you gotta ask. You gotta if you ask questions, we can know. You didn't even on a point. Yeah, I seen it. We can look at that. Let's go look at type. Let's go and type it down. Let's go and look at that. All right. I seen that. Let's go to it so we can look at it ourselves. I surely did see that, but obviously we gotta have discernment when we talk about those things. I gotta think about how that's quoted. Let me see. Let's go to that quote. Let's go to that quote. As that's just one piece. That's one piece. Even just to mention for them to be Ethiopian, right? I'm too bad I can't click that link right there, right? Let's go to. Let's just type it down to get an idea. 55 AD. Um, what would I type down there to try to find it? I could type Ethiopian origin. Let me see. Let me try to type it the way that it sounded, because I don't know exactly what book that is. Let me see. I guess I'll just let me just see what I get from this, because I want to find the mix blender. This one probably got a source to it, I would think. Yeah, Ethiopia's look like right there. Okay, so you see right here. Tell now, do you agree that this is it? Right? Do you agree that is Tacticus, this historian? Do you agree that this is it? All right, so let's understand this. This is the quote. This is a quote. As long as we agree, watch what it says here. A few authorities hold in the reign of Isis that the so and so, you say the surplus population of Egypt was evacuated to neighboring islands. So they talk about the obviously the neighboring lands, right? The people that was in Egypt were evacuated to neighboring lands under the leadership of where you see right there. I don't know how you pronounce that, and Judas, right? Many, right, assure us that the Jews, right? Many, watch what it says here. This is the quote. This is the real quote. This is the real quote, not the idea. This is the real quote, word for word, right? Many assure us that the Jews are descended from those Ethiopians who were driven by fear and hatred to emerge from the home country of whatever his name, Kentipus, for the sake of understanding, was king. Let me just show you this. Let's go. Let's just go and make sure this is the historical quote. Just said the Jews are descendant of the. Looks like they are descendants of the Ethiopians, right? Are you not like the children of Ethiopians to me? Can an Ethiopian change a spot? No. But let's go. Let's type this down. Let's just let's go, because I wish I had a. I would rather have spent time pulling up a direct one from his writings from his book, so you can just see that, and then we can just call it a day on that one. Let me see. fact, let me just see if he has a source on that, because usually they put that source right on there. Otherwise, that's it. You can see right here. Here's some writings. Let me see, where is that? Some Jews. Right here. Here's another one. Many assure us that the Jews are descended from those Ethiopians. He just said that the Jews are descended from those Ethiopians. You see what's going on there? Absolutely not. Ethiopia never meant all of Africa. When did Ethiopia mean all of Africa? That's super false. That's extremely false. That's never. This is during the time. Okay, let's understand this. Let me show you something. Obviously, you're not. Where was Libya? If it was, if all of it, if all of Africa was called Africa, where was Libya? Because remember, Libya was the upper Africa, upper area of Africa. Let's go to a real map by Herodotus. Let's go to a real map and look at that. You gotta make sure we look at these things clear. Because I'm looking at the quote, right? I'm looking at the quote, and we see that it said what it says right there. It does it not say that they are descendants from the Ethiopians? Can the Ethiopian change their spot? We don't have to make it complex. We just got to understand what it said. That's all you got to understand. But I'm waiting for this note to open up. I'm gonna show you something. Let's go to maps. Let's take a look at maps. Okay. So show me one map where all of Africa is called Ethiopia. This is Libya. Up here in ancient maps, up there was Libya. Here's a map by Herodotus. By Herodotus, and this is an old one. This is about 400 BC, for the sake of understanding. 484, 425 BC. Okay? Up there was Libya. This was not Africa. That's not what you saw there. Right? This was never ever called Ethiopia. Ethiopia was underneath here. Everything down here was Ethiopia. Up here was Libya. It's a fact. I don't know why you're saying that all of Africa was called. That's ridiculous. There's no map that's designed like that. Everything down here, that was a mystery. Because what does Ethiopia mean? Why would you say Ethiopian origin? Because the name Ethiopia actually means black face. That's what Ethiopia means. Ethiopia actually means black face. You can look up yourself. Ethiopia is a term, right? In fact, I think one of these even has a direct message on that. I think on this one. Maybe it does. Let's see. I want to show you something. If it's on this thing, I don't know if it is. We'll just let me show you something. I want to see if I can find the translation so you can see. I want to go to a direct translation so you can see what I'm showing you here. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. Here's an idea. I'm not gonna keep looking for it because got some images going on. You can see right here, Ethiopia mean blackface, right? Greek. You can look in the Greek, the Horn of Africa, right? Called Kush and all those things and whatnot. Ethiopia was a lower area in ancient maps, for the sake of understanding. We can look at it in ancient maps, right? Like for example, right here, this lower area was called Ethiopia. This lower area. That was called Ethiopia. That's very important to understand. So if they're called Ethiopian, then they're saying they're deep African. They're blackface. They say they have blackface origin. That's what it's saying right there. You see what's going on? Otherwise, understand. You can post if you have a source that you want us to look at, post it in there because I'm showing you two, and they both agree. Right? That's the quote, right? From right there. Even got the little times, little stamp. Book 5, part 2, chapter 2, and we can even go to that. Let's try to find the book. Let's try to see if we can find it. Mm. Oh, there it is right there. See? It says, watch this. This is the quote. This is another one. Classical. This is actually the source. Right? Watch what it says here. We can see what it says right there. Right? We can read it. We can say some say the Jews were figuratively from Crete, right? Some settled on the nearest coast of Africa about the time of Saturn was driven, right? Now it's not saying they are descended from people of Crete, obviously. It's saying they're from the area. They say some are say they're from this area, some say they're from this area, right? Who settled in Africa. But we got to quote this part because we got to know what is actually saying the origin of race. Watch what it says here. It says race, right? That's a difference between area. That's what you're not understanding. Make sure you understand that these are actually areas. We don't even have to go about it in a sense of nonsensical understanding. We can understand what it says right here. Many again say that they were a race of Ethiopian origin. That's all you have to see. Why is it that all you have to see? Because even just to consider that, can an Ethiopian change their skin tone? Can an Ethiopian change their skin tone? No. No, an Ethiopian cannot change their skin tone. So it's a fact. So I don't understand. That's why I just showed you on these other ones, they're also saying the same thing as well, right? An Ethiopian, blackface. Their race is blackface. Come on now, stop. So I just want you to understand, for the sake of understanding, that they're dark skinned. It's a fact. We can look at their haplotype groups and match it. We can match them with the history. We can match them with what they're saying. This is the race, not the location. I'm not saying that they're from Africa. We're not talking about these locations. We're talking about a race here. This is a different concept. We have to understand, and what is it? What we see there, right? We see that it's saying this is their race. That's what he's saying. He's saying many again say that they were a race of Ethiopian origin. How are they going to be? How are you going to even have a rumor like that? You don't hear anybody saying that the Ashkenazi are Ethiopian origin. You never see nothing like that. So just stop it. Stop it. No one's lying. You gotta look at what it says right here. We're not gonna waste our time reading about location. Look what it says right there, right? Some say the Jews were figuratively, right, from the Isles location of Crete. That's a location. That's not a race. Stop. You got to go about if you reading these books, you need to take the highlights and run with the highlights. You don't just read the whole thing and think that you're gonna read the whole thing and then just you're gonna understand the quote by reading the whole thing. You read the section. You read what's actually going on. You have to read the context. What's the context? This is location, right? Some Jews from this location, who settled location, right? Evidence is sought of this, right? It's very important to understand. Evidence of this is sought in the name, right? Evidence for the location. You can see right here, all these things, they're talking about location. This is important to understand. That's location. But notice the difference here. It's not talking location anymore. That's a fact. Watch what it says here. Many again say they were a race. None of these say race. This doesn't say they are a race from Crete or they are a Crete race. It doesn't say anything like that. That's not what we're seeing here. Stop confusing what they're saying. Many again say that they were a race of Ethiopian origin. They're a race. That's what they're saying. They're saying that people concluded that they were a race of Ethiopian origin. Ethiopia at this time, even in this time, even if it was 70 AD, for the sake of understanding, even in this time, Understand this. That's all going to be one area. That's important to understand. We can look at the map, right? We can look at the map and we can see where's Ethiopia. If they are a race of Ethiopian, first it's Ethiopia. It's Ethiopian. Ethiopia itself means black face, right? As a fact. And we can look ourselves, right? Ethiopia was down here. Ethiopians, we know what Ethiopians look like. There's no debate on what the Ethiopians look like. If we can't understand that, if we can't understand that the Ethiopians look black, then we're not getting nowhere. Understand that. They cannot change. Can an Ethiopian change his skin? Can a leopard change their spots and an Ethiopian change their skin? No. That's why he said you are like the Ethiopians to me, right? They cannot change their skin. Ethiopian cannot change their skin. They cannot change their spots. And that's what Harada is saying there. They're saying their race. How are you going to mistake an Ashkenaz? How are you going to mistake anyone else as Ethiopian origin? Understand that. Think about that. That's important to think about. That's a race. That's not location. That doesn't make any sense. I wouldn't even dare try to use that in a sense of an argument. I would not say, oh well, because they say they come from these areas. That would not even come. That would even come close to a statement saying a race. Right? It's obviously we have to understand that this one's actually saying that they are actually related or close, looking like they're closely related to the Ethiopian. Obviously, understanding that Moses also, that makes sense, right? Because Moses also married Hamites, Joseph married Hamites, Judah married Hamites. How many of them married Hamites? A lot of them. A lot of them married Hamites. You think none of them would look dark skinned? You think none of Judah will look dark skinned? You don't think Ephraim, Manasseh, born of the basically the Egyptian woman? You think that when Joseph had his children in Egypt, you think that they wouldn't look dark skinned, Ephraim, Manasseh, and then when they merged with Benjamin, that they wouldn't look dark skinned? What did Moses look like? It said he looked like an Egyptian, and the Egyptians were dark skinned at that time, whether they were R or they were E. They were darker skinned because we can see their statues, we can see their structures, we can see what they look like, how they designed themselves. They were darker skinned people. In fact, there was a group that had a whole debate. That was a two people that had a debate with these scholars about how the Egyptians look, and they destroyed them. It's a whole debate. You see it. Let's see. Me makes more sense. Me, yeah. Look at the full quote. He listed possibilities. Yes, family. Look. Let's have sense of understanding. Let's have sense of understanding. We don't need to read the whole thing because this is location. How many times do we have to say that? We don't need to do that because this is location. This is race. Do any of these say race? No, they don't say race. That I wouldn't even try to pull that ever with anyone. Don't try to pull that. That doesn't work. These are not races. This is location. It says some say the Jews were figuratively from. It didn't say descended. It says from the Isles of Crete. It doesn't say descended. It does not say descendant from Crete, from anyone of Crete. That does not work. That does not work at all. That's not saying race. This says race. Many again, if it said this, they were from Ethiopia, that itself even is going to be evidence that they are darker skinned. That's even going to be evidence. But in the sense, for the sake of understanding, it's even clearer saying race. Understand that. Because Ethiopia, we know who's in Ethiopia. It's called black tick. They call black, right? Understand that. Very important. What does the figurative mean? What does that mean, figurative? That doesn't mean nothing because that's location. They were figurative. Let's just for the sake of live, just put that because I see you're shouting it like it means something. But let's look at the definition. Right? Figurative. A person who has well, let's keep going. Let's go down a little bit. That's not what I'm looking for. We want to go to the definition that's used here. Let's see. I want to go to I'm gonna go to one. Oh, why I'm saying figurative? Fugitive. right? Basically being a subject there. That's location. We gotta understand that this is location still. Understand this is location. This is race, right? Many again say that they were a race of Ethiopian origin. That's a race, right? That's a race. There's a difference. There's a difference between race. There's a difference between race and a location, right? Very different to say race. So word for word, he's saying race here, right? Say many again say they were a race of Ethiopian origin, right? That's why that's there, because that's what it says. The Roman historian Tacitus in 55 AD wrote that many of his time believe that the Judeans were a race of Ethiopian origin. You see what it's saying there? So where's Ethiopia? Blackface down there, and they were a race, right? They believe that they were a race of Ethiopian origin. You see what I'm saying? That's important to understand that the Ethiopians were a darker skinned people. It's a fact. And that's just a small fact. These what you're seeing here is a small fact compared to how much we can actually show. That's just one thing. That's just one thing for the sake of understanding. That's one historian say what they look like, and we can pull out multiple historical facts. In fact, there's a video. If you want to see some historical facts, I can't give you all of them right now, but let me show you where you can go. In fact, there's a page. There's a lot of pages where you can go. Go to Benny Israel. How you say his name? Check out some of the pages that go over these things, and they'll show you themselves how deep this information go. Right? Let me just show you a video that I recommend you to see if you want to see actual historic information. Right? If this is not enough information for you, I got a whole video that's about 3 hours long because there's one person when they did a video right here. Watch it, and you'll see all the historical evidence you need to see to satisfy you to what is what and where is what. You'll see it all right there. Right? Right now, if you don't understand, if you don't believe these things, E1B1B, E1B1A, all those things, you don't understand those things, you don't believe what it's saying about the race, you don't believe any of these things, you're trying to make it a mixing of the race, you're trying to compare the race with a location, right? You're comparing apples and tomatoes. You're just that's what you're doing by taking information on the location compared to a race, right? Many again say they were a race of Ethiopian origin. That's important to understand. It's a race. What do the Ethiopians look like? Let's just take it and put it here. Show you something. Okay, here's the Ethiopians, right? Because what can't the Ethiopians do? They can't change their skin color, right? You say you can go toe and toe. It's not that I want you to go toe and toe. Understand? You're not like stepping up to me. You're stepping up to God. Understand? He's the one that chose his people and sent them into every nation and fell they all by the edge of the sword. So Jerusalem is trampled down by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles fulfilled. The link's in the chat. We can have a conversation on this. Have a holy conversation so we can get edification of truth. So it's very important to understand that this is something that we know. You got to look at the historical information. We're just showing you a little bit. If you're not satisfied with this, then you're new here. You're not familiar with all the information that's out there. There's more information in this. Multiple, multiple different informations. Right? It's very important to understand. Right? So if you want to have a holy conversation, because I'm about done, because you're not trying to hear the truth. So I'm gonna put this in the chat. Let's have a holy conversation. Don't be shy. Let's go up and have a holy conversation. As I think it's better to have a voice to voice conversation. So you can join. Let's have a holy conversation on these things, and that way we can talk about these things directly. We instead of circling around in circles, we're circling. We're going in circles. We're going in circles. It's a race thing. This right here is a race, right? There's a difference between location and race, right? So like we can have that conversation. I want to have that conversation with you, family. So if you have a chance, as you say, you can go toe to toe. I'm not really worried about going toe to toe, but I would rather prove these things by facts. So let's look at these things by facts, and we can go about these things as we should go about these things logically and in a holy conversation. As obviously, no one likes truth nowadays. People don't like truth because it's controversial, especially when it takes people out of their comfort zone. It takes people out of their comfort zone, right? So understand my teaching. Understand everyone agrees with this already. Many people who study this agrees with it. That the people that went into every nation and scattered throughout the whole nations, right? We can find out their Habakkuk group. We can find out who they are, right? And they're not the Ashkenaz. They're not. It's just a fact. They're not the Ashkenaz. And you don't believe it either. You don't believe that they are, so you're battling against yourself because what you don't understand is Habakkuk groups. If you don't understand Habakkuk groups, and if you believe, do you believe, in fact, because the brother, he's not really saying nothing about this, bug out. Let me just get one straight answer from you. Do you believe that the Negro is Israel? Do you believe that? Do you believe that the Negro is Israel, or who do you think is? In fact, who do you think is Israel? Who do you think is Israel? That way we can have an understanding of what you think. I just need to know what you think. Who do you think is Israel? Who do you think is Israel? Because I can show you multiple layers of not just me, but multiple different people that actually bring this out. And I just showed you someone who wasn't even black. This is not a biased thing. This is not a biased thing. It's about truth, right? So tell me, what people, name the people who you think is Israel. Name the people. Can you tell me who is Israel so that we can have an understanding on who is Israel? Who is Judah to you? Who is Judah? Let's start with that. Who is Judah? Because we can follow history of who Judah is. That's why the historian said that they were in the west parts of Africa, right? He said themselves they was in the west parts of Africa because we got historical documents that there were a king of Judah that was reigning down here. We have two different documents that actually say that. Two different documents that actually tells us that there was a king of Judah reigning in that area for the sake of understanding. So that's why we made sure those things are there, right? We even got copies like this, different copies, different other copies that tells you what the Portuguese look like and everything, the Portuguese Jews and whatnot. And we got a lot of different information on those things to talk about. But what do you say the Jews are? Who do you say that the Jews are? As I think it's important to know who they are because what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Evidence. I think evidence is interesting. I think evidence is important, right? In fact, you can see right here, very interesting stuff. If you want to see, you can go over. But I'm still waiting for your answer. Israel is mingled with nations, scattered among nations. I don't know. Happens to Judah after. So you don't know. But who is Judah? Can you tell me who is Judah? Bug out, bug out. Can you tell me someone has to be Judah? Understand? Someone has to be Judah. Someone has to be the Israelites. Who do you believe? Because you say it is not the Ashkenazi. You said it's not the Ashkenazi. So who is Judah? Can you tell me who is Judah? We need to know who is Judah. We need to know who is Judah. He might not be an agent because he said that he doesn't believe that the Ashkenazi is Judah. That's what he said. He doesn't believe that Ashkenazi is Judah, and a lot of geneticists don't believe. But I'm confused. Bug out. I'm confused. I understand. I see that. I see that you're saying it's not the Ashkenazi. I don't understand. I don't understand what you're going. If it's not the Ashkenazi, where do you, because you're saying that you don't know where Judah is. We do. We got evidence where Judah went. We can follow them throughout history. We can follow them throughout all of history. But who do you say today genetically is Judah? If it's not the Ashkenazi, who is Judah today? Who is Judah? We gotta ask our questions. We gotta ask these questions, and then we can find out who is Judah. Because we can find them. We can find who Judah is. But if they're not the Ashkenazi, who is Judah? We got to at least know who is Judah, right? We got to understand who is Judah, right? So we're just, I'm telling you, we're circling around because what you don't understand is Habakkuk groups. That's what you don't understand yet. You don't know about Habakkuk groups or genetics. You're not familiar with it. And I'm not going to blame you for it. I'm not even going to disrespect you. I'm going to actually just let you know that maybe if you get some time, I do got some videos studying on the genetics with the history to match the things together to get the understanding of those things. I agree, right? Many geneticists agree that the Ashkenazi, their haplogroups groups, don't point to Judah. They don't. They don't point to Judah at all in history, right? We did a lot of videos, different videos on that. That's why Synthetic Sunday, the first video, we break down the whole idea of the Ashkenazi basically being the people. They can't be. It's impossible, even by looking at the mtDNA, the female DNA, because one, who did Israel mix with? A bunch of different Shemites and Hamites. That's what happened. It's a fact. And that's not what we see in the Ashkenazi. We don't see that in the mtDNA. But I'm glad you understand that. You agree that the Ashkenazi are not their own people. That's a fact. They're their own people. They converted to Judaism, which is confirmed by many different sources. But who is Judah? We got to understand who is Judah. That's what I need to know. Using Arabia influence the Muslims, but I think they went to Arabia. Okay, so thinking they went to Arabia and knowing they went to Arabia is two different things. Now we do have some evidence that they did go to Arabia after 70 AD. But where did they go? They went downwards. They went down south, right? We could go to there's a video that Truth United did, right? That talks about that. I guess this would probably help out some clarity for that thought. Truth United got a video that was a little older. Not that really that old. Right here, this one right here. And if you see it, he goes over the history on how the Jews basically were sent into the area of right here.
Powerful.
He talks about how the Jews went into Arabia. That's a true statement. Amen. I'm glad you saw that. So we do know about the Jews, how they went to Arabia, but did you know even he knows, even True Fanatic knows that the Jews are darker skinned. And the reason why he knows because there's a lot of historical evidence that actually confirms it. They confirm that they're darker skinned. That's why he designs them like that. That's not a mistake. He's doing that on purpose because he knows that they're darker skinned. True Fanatic knows they are. But he's reaching a larger crowd of different types of people. And by doing that, he's getting a lot of people to realize the truth without offending them like a lot of the Hebrew Israelites were doing, right? That were cursing at people, telling them that they were of Satan and stuff like that, and saying they were Esau and all that stuff when they haplogroups groups weren't even connected with Esau. All types of stuff that were just blasphemous and ridiculous. All types of levels of nonsensical statements. But Truth and Edit, as you see, just like how we are, we're illustrating the truth and bringing forth the evidence of these things without, well, as the scripture said, if I try not to cause offense, you're going to cause offense to somebody. You're going to offend someone somewhere. It's just going to happen. But I just want you to understand that Truth and Edit knows, but he himself, he's designing it in a way very skillfully, not to cause offense, but he is providing the truth of these things. Because what we also can find out, Truth and Edit actually gets to the point where he actually shows that they go into the slave trade. See what's going on right there? This map right here is a map, is a classic map. We can pull it up too because we have multiple maps with this map, this name. There wasn't just one map with this, but multiple maps that were made in the 1700s that had this on it. 16, even younger that we find on there. And then you see right there, he talks about how they were in Africa, right? He talks about how they went downwards over here, right? They went downwards, and that's what happened. They end up going downwards. Some of them went downwards here. That's why you see them in different groups in these areas. And some of them was in Portugal's, and they were shipped around right here. And there was a little island right here, and that's what Portugal's did. They sent some of the Jews, the ones who wasn't able to escape the Romans. The Romans took and sent them to Portugal. And that's important because these ones, they was over here. There was some that was over here too. It was all sent over here. And then later on, we get a lot of history, and then they end up being sent over here, settled in these areas. And they end up cutting off the king of, well, one of the Jews that was ruling in this area. And this is what he's showing. This is actual historic. What he's illustrating is a historic document. These are historic documents and multiple documents with it like this. So that's why he actually illustrates it like that, right? So from here, they actually went to all the nations. So what's the thing also we got to find? They didn't take everyone, right? They would have took, now obviously, if the Jews were down here, some would scatter, some would run, some would escape, right? And that's what we find. We find large groups of that E1B1A down there. and we find the evidence of them in San Tome, Principe. We find the evidence of them. We find all these Jews. Yep, we care proof. I believe you, but I can't agree that Syria is part of Africa. Okay, so besides the fact that if we look at the understanding that's said right here, there is another way to find out. I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you there's another way to know that Israel went into this land. Besides the fact of genetics, because genetics is genetics. You know, genetics you can't even debate. There's a 10 trillion% chance of it being off. Understand that. That's what they say themselves. 10 trillion chance. Let's look at this little right here. Right? What lineages do we find in this area? You see this solid green line? This is all that E lineage, right? E3, this E3A and E3B, all that whatnot. These are going to be your E lineages. This is going to bring forth your E1B1A that's down here in these areas, right? You're going to have some other people down here, your A's and whatnot. And who are all these? Who are all these E lineages that's actually connected to the Jews, right? It's the same if you think about the Jews, right? That actually went into captivity in all nations and fell by the edge of the sword, right? And then Jerusalem was trampled down by the Gentiles at the time the Gentiles was fulfilled. They were sent into all nations, and their lineage is E1B1A. These are E1B1A. All these down here, and they're uncountable, as Josephus says right here. He says right here, they're beyond the river Euphrates and now and in innumerous numbers, right? And remember, beyond the Euphrates, he says it again in another statement. Remember, beyond the Euphrates, he says it again in another statement, in another place, right? Right there. Beyond the Euphrates. He says he gathers the captivity beyond the Euphrates and stayed there. So beyond the Euphrates is actually going to be, as you see right there, it says they came to Babylon desirous to go down into Jerusalem. They wanted to go down to Jerusalem. And one we can see right there that the 10 tribes are beyond the Euphrates to now. They're beyond the Euphrates. They're on the other side. Just like how it said they came to the other side. So that's one way to understand it. And we can look at the genetics and it matches. They're innumerable. You can't count them. That's what Flavor Joseph is saying there. They can't be counted. And the genetics match the same people. You see what's happening there? And if we're able to connect these pieces, then we're able to understand what's actually going on. We got to connect also the historical documents. There's way too many historical documents for me to show in one place. The best way is for you to see that video, right? I think it's one of the best places. Otherwise, there's a lot of different channels. I'll show you just a couple of channels that I recommend if you want to see these things. Thought Camera Action, deep. All these channels that I'm going to show you, subscribe to them and check it out. You can look at it yourself. There's some great videos on some interesting things. I don't know if he got a straight playlist with all that, but you can see some interesting things. Obviously, there's some other stuff there too, but he goes over some history. You can go right here. Go to the Spanish, look at the Spanish Inquisition and check out this. Check out this video. Check out this. It's very deep. You can also check out, let me just see. We got some other brothers there. This brother, he gets deep. Will, son of Yah, he gets real deep on some history. He gets really deep on some historical stuff. And it's really interesting how he connects things together. And you can see what the tribes are in those areas. Really deep. Really, really deep he goes over. Benny Yah, Israel. Got to recommend him. He's a brother that goes over these things. But he has a direct page, Hidden Hebrews. Subscribe here and just sit down and watch these videos. Subscribe to Hidden Hebrews, sit down and watch these videos, and you'll understand it. Start from here. Start from here. Don't start from the top. You'll get confused. Don't start up here. Don't start at these ones. You could, but you're gonna get confused if you're not familiar. Start here and start watching these. And I'm telling you, you'll see the whole picture connect. You can't not see the picture connect if you start from there. This is what I recommend. Hidden Hebrews. Out of all the channels, this is the channel you want to sub to, Hidden Hebrews. If you want to get the straight historical documents, you'll see them right there. And it's straight actual, like for example, I'll just show you a sample. Let's just click one of these. And what he basically does is he has different historical sources on some of them. Some of them, they're more movie-like and whatnot. but I'm gonna show you that he has actual historical sources from the leaders and stuff like that, from different types of people. He pulls up different sources, and you got to see it. You got to see these sources that he's pulling up, and there are a lot of different sources, right? Very deep, very deep sources. I definitely recommend the sub to these channels. These are some deep channels, very very deep. There's another channel that's extremely deep on another level. This one too, but I'm going to show you this one. See if I have it on here. Right here. This channel definitely sub to. This is a deep one of the deepest studies that you can see. He talks a lot about a Native American, but if you go through his videos, for example, I'm just gonna go down a little bit. He goes over Sephardic and stuff like that right there, Swarthy Europe and stuff like there. Some very interesting information that I highly recommend. Talks about Abraham Lincoln and different things and whatnot. He goes deep on some things. So it's very, very deep. I definitely recommend seeing that. He also talks about the Moors being black and everything. No more hijack, right? He goes over those things and whatnot. It's very deep, very, very deep. Obviously, you got to stay connected with wise men, wise souls, so that you can keep growing. Study. This is a good channel. Study of it. But this is not going to get on to what we're getting to. This is just more historical, which is good to always have historical channels. Be close. Know maps. Know your maps. Obviously, Dante. He goes over these things. Playlists. I definitely recommend Dante. Obviously, he goes super deep into these things too. This is where you're going to get a lot of those historical things. We more focus on prophecy. I'm not going to be honest with you. I'm not really a fan of debating with something we already know. But I love to make sure we have clarity of truth with brothers and sisters, as I think it's important. But this obviously was just, to me, finding out this was evidence of the Bible. That's all it was to me, was just finding out evidence, genetic evidence of the Bible. Because, I'm not going to keep on agreeing on a lie. As they say, the Ashkenazi, their lines are Japhetic. It's very important. That's why looking at Dr. Nathaniel, he tells us himself on different things on that. But I wanted to see if it's true. So the E lineage actually has evidence, high evidence with actual real life historical quotes that actually confirms that the E lineage is actually going to be of Israel. It is in harmony because you see P2, P2 actually brings forth E1B1B, and that's Ishmael. It's important to understand. And it's completely separate. It's completely separate. You can see it yourself if you go over it, right? They look different. E1B1B, they're just a little different. They just look a little different, right? Here's an example, right? Like the Somali, right? All of them are E1B1B. You see right here? So this is just an idea of what a real Ishmaelite looks like. You can see, right? So I'm gonna close that. So it's just an idea. I just want to show you that this is just important to understand that E3A, that's going to be your E1B1 A, right? So very important when you look at these things, just to get an idea of understanding, right? Just got to understand who is who. Once you get the genetics down, there's no debate. Once you get the genetics down, there's no debate. You can get a clear understanding by understanding the genetics, right? So once you know who is Judah, what they look like, where they went, and all that stuff, you just got to connect genetics. That's all you got to do is connect genetics. And once you connect genetics, that's 100% on top of the historical documents, because it's too many this historical documents for me to even try to. Got some great evidence though. Yep. Dante, exactly. Yep. We recommend about Black Hebrews. Um, Let me see. Go up a little bit. Can you please link the channel? Yes, I'll link at all those channels. I'll put in the description. In this video, I'll put a whole bunch of channels that I recommend that go extremely deep on some things that even when I sit there, not saying that I'm the best or anything like that. As you see, I'm not even the best reader for the sake of understanding. But I do these things because I love truth. But I sit there and I be like, I gotta study this. This is really deep. But when you study it, you understand it more, and it gets more edifying. But I'm gonna show you some of those things so you can see it. because that's, I think when it comes to historical documents, there's too many people touching on it. It's so many historical documents. I think that type of field is field. I think the historical documents field. So that's why what I did, I wanted to perfect the understanding of the genetic information. So I want to understand the genetic information, how it connects in the history, who it connects to, right? And look at those things. And that's what this is. It's looking at the genetic information, and it does match, and it does have what is required. It does have 12 tribes in it, and it does bring forth Ishmael. So the line, when you see the Hebrews speaking what they're speaking, some groups may be offensive. Yes, some Hebrews, as I also had a debate with many Hebrews in my time. I think a lot of the practice in some places is really rough, but they are right. Their truth is right. Is they're actually Israel. That's basically what it comes down to. If they're E1B1A, because understand, not all of them are E1B1A. I talked to a Hebrew that was this line and that line, and a lot of them, there is a difference between. You can see right here. This is going to be your P2. That's going to bring forth your lines of Ishmael, and this is going to be your lines of Israel. This is your lines of Israel over here. See if I have a clear way of showing that on here. And that's what this is: genetics, 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 genetics. It's the clearest way of understanding it, right? E is never, remember, like I said, the E lineages, no ancient E lineage is found outside of this area. Listen to me when I'm saying this. They're not found in Africa. They're always found in these areas. And this area was where Abraham's family was, up here. Abraham's family was up here. And that's how we know this is not the Canaanites. It's not the Canaanites because this area was private. That was an area where actually Abraham was. We know that his family was up there because he says it himself. He says for Isaac to go up there where his family is. But let me show you something. I want to show you a clear, see if I can find it, a clear picture of this Havical groups and whatnot. This one too, I guess this kind of works, but I'm looking for, okay, right here. Let's just work with this. So you can see right here, this is an ancient branch, this is an ancient branch, this is an ancient branch. No one is these branches. But from this branch right here, we get the line of Ishmael, right? From Abraham's branch, we get a line from Ishmael, and we automatically get this in-between branch that makes a line that is outside of the 12 branches, which is Esau. And that line is actually E1B1C. And then there's going to be your E1B1A, and that's going to be your 12 branches of Israel, right? It all starts with E1B1, E1B1. That's where it starts. There's some other charts where they started all the way back here, but that doesn't work out at all. It doesn't work out to give you the line of Ishmael. So it got to come from Abraham, bring forth the line of Ishmael. And that's where you get your E1B1B lineages. And we can see that throughout history. That's why we have a separate video called E1B1B that just goes over the E1B1B with the historical evidence and all those things. And it's really interesting. But it's important to know who's Israel in the sense of who's Israel and, matching those things together. So I just want to see if the genetics match. Does the genetics actually match the historical claims? And the genetics match the historical claims. They actually match when you actually take the consideration of looking at them and examining them the way that they're supposed to be and seeing if they actually have evidence. And that's what we found. We found that, we found for a fact that there were Jews down there. We found genetic information showing that the Jews were in Portugal and in São Tomé and Príncipe. Because when I say in Portugal, we found that these people we found the children, right? Because there was 2,000 children taken, and we found the children in São Tomé. I mean, not São Tomé, in Portugal, right? We found the children up there. They were tied up, right? Just like how they said, everything that they said had happened. Everything that they said that happened when they took the children, forcefully baptized them, right? Everything and whatnot. How they took them to the island of St. Thomas, São Tomé. So that's why we looked at that to see if there was evidence that this group came from this area. And yeah, there's evidence that this group came from this area and settled in this area. And there's evidence that there's a migration of a group down there. There's evidence that there was a massive group, massive, all the same Havical group. all of them have the same Y haplotype group, a massive group that can't be numbered. It just fits so perfectly what he says in a number that can't be numbered. It can't even be put in numbers, and it all matches together. Everything matches together. That's why looking at these things and connecting it makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Whose tribe speaks form of Hebrew? Yeah. Do you have any? Do you have book to recommend? It depends on the type of book. Like for example, if we're talking about a book that talks about, in fact, I got some books. I got a few books myself that I would recommend. I'll show you an interesting book. I got an interesting book that now this one it depends what you find interesting, because this one is going to be more about the Ashkenaz and the Germans and stuff like that. May not be into it, but I'll just show you just for the sake of understanding. Right here, this is a book. I'll put it in the description. Uh, I I haven't read it all. I read a few pages, but it just talks about the antiquities of nations, more particularly of the Celts and the Gauls. And that's interesting because I'm doing a study right now, the Celts and the Gauls and everything, and that is actually important to know because the Scythians. But this book is interesting because it talks about the modern Jews actually, and it talks about it's interesting. It's a very interesting book. I think to me it's interesting because it talks about some things that are kind of skimmed through in history. But that's one book I recommend. I'll put it in the description. But I'll show you. Otherwise, those quotes are better ones than what I think I could find if I look for a book. I'm not really, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not really, I don't have that much books, but I do have some. But I don't think that in the sense it's more quotes. Is you find an area, you find a chapter and stuff, and you quote it, and it's not really like you sit there and read the whole book because a lot of it's boring. A lot of it's just extra stuff. They just talk about their lives and all types of things. Some of it's interesting if you find like an interesting book, but from the quotes I found, I wouldn't say to read the whole book. I can say there's a book that I say that I would recommend reading the whole thing, but I'm thinking now. Now they got me thinking about a book. If I was to read a book, I recommend Flavius Josephus. I recommend books from Flavius Josephus because it gives you history of the Bible and extra stuff and whatnot, and you're getting a perspective of a first century. Um, so if I was to recommend a book, I would recommend the writings from Flavius Josephus. That's what I would recommend. I think the writings of Flavius Josephus is a good read to sit down and read, or the Bible. Right here, let's see, where is the Flavius Josephus one? Right here. The New Complete Works of Flavius Josephus. I recommend Josephus' work. I think Josephus writes some interesting stuff, like on some things that brings a lot of understanding to things, I think. So this is Flavius Josephus. So I would recommend that. That's what I recommend. But as in the sense of sources, sources, that's when you want to check out some of these channels. I would recommend Genesis 49ers, but he's kind of he curses a little too much. I wouldn't want to recommend that to someone. But I'll put those links in the description. But for the sake of clarity, on this thing, that's all that it's talking about. It's just talking about that since the Jews were on the other side of Euphrates, the other side of Euphrates counts as the same concept, is what it's saying. Because since the Jews were on the other side of Euphrates, that the Israel wasn't in Asia and Europe, uh, and they were actually going to be on the other side of Euphrates, being southward. And because if we think about it, if we think about what it's saying there, they're in numerous numbers, right? If you just think about that concept, they can't be in Asia and Europe in numerous numbers. If they can't be numbered, you gotta figure out if they're where they're at. Because remember, if they say they're not subject to the Romans and everything, all those things, we still got to understand the concept of what we're seeing with them. It's saying they're in a group on the other side of Euphrates that can't be numbered. And then we can find their genetics. We can find their genetics and see where they are. And that will actually pull us in the direction of where they are. And we can see that. And that's important because when we follow the rabbit trail, we can find the evidence of these things. And remember, they also went to Brazil, and we also find their genetics in Brazil. We find their genetics in Brazil. We find their genetics in all the areas where it's historically documented that they went. As there's even, in fact, I'm gonna show you something. I'll show you one more thing real fast. I'm gonna show you something. This is why you gotta be careful with history, because a lot of the history is image based, and which a lot of the images are altered, a lot of altered images. But let me show you. There's a pirate, right? Because you think about New Indies, the area right here, right here. This would be the New Indies. Also was the area where you see the Caribbean and whatnot. I want to show you something. There was a pirate there. That was a famous Jewish pirate in that area, right here. And if you try to look it up, you're gonna find these type of images like this. But let me show you something. You can find real historical quotes on this individual, and you can find that he's a Sephardic, and you can see what it says, what he looks like, and everything, the color of him. But let me show you. I want to show you the link to this right here. I recommend this channel because if you like books, if you like reading, this guy, all he does is read. He's a great reader. I wish I can read like he reads. He reads amazing. This person right here, he reads with like he's a teacher, and it's really great to see these things what he does right here.
They made it mean Spain. This is the etymology, letting you know, online etymology dictionary. It was in Spain. So earlier, when we're reading Sephardi and Encyclopedia Britannica, and the time of Spain, you see
So
the parentheses.
really, really interesting to see for this stuff. It's really interesting to get an idea on some of these things and whatnot. So this one, I'll just put this whole one in the description. This note, it's just I don't even have a title for it. I'm still working on this note, still doing some studying on this individual. But I did find some interesting things that a lot of it is image based, the false wrong images that's actually being done there, because we can find historical quotes on what he looked like, and it really paints a different picture than what everything else says and whatnot. So it's really interesting. It's really interesting to see some of these things, some of these historical writings, and people bringing them out. I think it's important that we look at those things and examine them. But I don't really have a, like I said, a reading material or anything like that. But this is just some information that I think is important, just important to know. So I guess the best way to leave this is, when we think of certain things like race, certain code words, right? Race is very important. So I think that's the best way to put it. I'll just make sure after this, I'm gonna just load this up with some sources, put some sources in the chat so you can see those things for sake of understanding. But I guess the best way to summarize this is all the sources that's going to be in the chat, especially the one Hidden Hebrews. I definitely recommend seeing those, especially that Hidden Hebrews series. And then you can understand the genetic study. If you want to see a direct genetic study, I think the best one that we did so far is in the playlist right here, and it will be right here in Synthetic Sunday. Because I not well, all of them are meat. All of them are full of meat, but this one in particular is going to show you how the genetics match with the history, right? I just put this here for history. This video that I just put there just for some history. And this right here, this video too that I did with Genesis 49ers, that one also goes deep into the genetics as well. So these two videos right here, between this picture right here where it says notes, these are the ones that I really, these ones right here. These ones I would really recommend. This and this. I think this is good too to know the history of the thing. But these two right here is going to be the two that I really recommend. I think these two are going to be really important when understanding genetics and history. Because like I said, touching on history, they hit everything. They hit everything on history. They hit almost everything on history. But I wanted to match it with genetics, and that's what happened. We matched it with genetics, and that's what we seen. So I just want to clarify that for the sake of understanding, as I think it's good to have a holy conversation. These things are always good. So with that, family, I don't know if you have any more questions, but that's why we provide clarity on these things. But I'm glad that we have a understanding on that. That yes, based on a lot of things that not Dr. Nathaniel said, when we look at the J Havico group, we know for a fact that the J line, which is the line that they chose as the Ashkenaz, as the line of the what you say, the Kohanim, right? The Kohanim line, that's not going to be Israel. It's going to be Turks. So we got that confirmed by multiple geneticists and looking at those things. So that's why I wanted to look at genetics to make sure that history, history. But if we can match genetics, then is that's pretty much solves it right there. So based on the evidence, we see for the sake of understanding, we see that this is actually going to be a true thing. It's very important to understand. But the time will come where this will also come to life. This will all come to life, that what's going on here. That's why we make sure we got the historical quotes and what other historians say and find evidence on that. Because E is not found in ancient Africa, right? No ancient no ancient lineage of E is found in Africa. It's not. You can look it up yourself. That's why they call it a Middle Eastern group. So it does have evidence to, and it has potential for what it is, and we do know about its expansion, right? We do know about the so-called Bantu expansion when the people were moving and going down and filling up Africa, right? They were actually all one people that filled that area. So I just wanted to share that for the sake of understanding. That's what that information shows, that the people went down southwards into Africa. But any more questions, let me know. Otherwise, we can have a holy conversation as many times as we need to bring forth understanding. But I do believe that it's more important that we have a voice to voice. So with that, family, I hope that we bring some clarity to truth. And watch, I'm gonna put some stuff in the description. So with that, be blessed, be beloved,